We're ready whenever y'all are. Good evening. Welcome to AISD. In compliance with Chapter 551, Open Meetings of the Texas Government Code, I call to order a regular voting meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District for Thursday, August 31st, 2023 at 6:02 p.m. Quorum of the board is physically present at the AISD Central Office to conduct this meeting. This meeting is streaming live on AISD TV and Apple TV. It's also being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum, Astound Broadband, and on channel 99 through AT&T Uverse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. So welcome and thank you for joining us. We will move to the approval of the agenda. Secretary Boswell, do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Having a motion by Secretary Boswell and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve the agenda, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously. All right. Secretary Boswell, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa, una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Te honro, bandera de Texas. Te juro lealtad, Texas. Un estado bajo Dios, uno e indivisible.
Thank you. So we will now move to our game changer item, which is our opportunity to recognize and observe important items happening in AISD and our nation. So Mr. Segura, would you please share our recognitions?
Absolutely. Thank you, President Singh. I'd like to ask Dr. Jacob Reach, Chief Officer of Governmental Relations and Board Services, to come up and introduce our partner recognitions.
Thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, President Singh, trustees, and Interim Superintendent Segura. I am here tonight to ask for formal recognition of Austin ISD's 2023 Back to School Partner and Office Depot's Start Proud program. First, we'd like to recognize our Back to School partners, and then we'll recognize our Office Depot Start Proud program. This year's Back to School efforts were made possible by Austin ISD staff and partners who reimagined what the community support could look like and helped expand its impact across the district. Through backpacks and school supplies, and culminating in Austin ISD's showcase next month, so still time to go. We haven't passed it yet. We want to recognize first Christina Burbank from our Department of Communications and Community Engagement, who is leading this effort and really goes above and beyond to serve the district. And we are grateful for the following partners, many of whom are here tonight, and we'd ask that if you are here, please go ahead and stand. So we have A+ Federal Credit Union. Thank you. We have 3M. Thank you to 3M. ACR Engineering. Amy and Ken Jones. HEB, Marion and Chris Casey. Oric Harrington and Sutcliffe. Salesforce. Samsung. And the last of our annual sponsors, Wells Fargo. Now I'd like to list our in-kind sponsors, and I'll read them out and we can applaud for all at the end. So our in-kind sponsors for these events included 100 Black Men of Austin, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, Central Health, the City of Austin, City Year, Colony Park Neighborhood Association, DJ Bling Foundation, and the National Association of Counties. Trustees, it's my pleasure to request formal recognition from the trustees for all of our great back-to-school partners.
So thank you so much. Thank you to our partners. We so appreciate it. Vice President Foster, do you have a recognition statement to share for Office Depot Start Proud?
I feel bad singling out Office Depot.
I know.
They are
We're
when
so
all
lucky.
these folks are here.
No, we have our back-to-school first.
Oh, okay. Whoops.
Yeah.
I apologize.
That would be
then.
Trustee Gonzalez who
I'm
has that.
sorry. I am following the script, and I should have known better to pay attention to that. So, Trustee, is it going to be Gonzalez? Okay. Do you have a recognition statement to share for our awesome back-to-school partners?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Good.
Thank you, President Singh. On behalf of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it is my honor to recognize 2023 back-to-school partners for their support and commitment to Austin ISD's student and families. Each summer, Austin ISD collaborates with local nonprofit organizations, service providers, business and community partners to support back-to-school efforts for every school across the district. With the generous support of our committed partners this year, over 15,000 students received backpacks and school supplies at their campuses, critical support for nearly 42% of Austin ISD students who qualify for free or reduced meals. Partners provided in-kind donations, including backpacks, supplies, resources, and additional services. Many staff and community members volunteered countless hours to prepare and fill backpacks with supplies. In addition to receiving supplies at their home campuses, partners will participate in this year's Austin ISD Showcase on Saturday, September 23rd at 9 a.m. at the Palmer Event Center. Students and families attending the showcase will learn about school programs and community partnerships that can help them experience a successful school year. These types of partnerships are to be commended. It is with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District recognizes and thanks all 2023 back-to-school partners for their support of Austin ISD students and families. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And for our second, we're excited to recognize our special partnership with the Office Depot Start Proud program. Office Depot stepped up its support this year in providing school supplies to our students and teachers. So I'd like to ask for formal recognition for our Office Depot Start Proud program.
All right, now, Vice President Foster, would you have a recognition statement for Office Depot Start Proud?
I do, although I have to say that my favorite moment so far was seeing HEB stand up, and it was a single person.
I know.
I'm now at HEB.
I love that.
Former employee.
That's right. So on behalf of Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it's my honor to recognize the Office Depot Start Proud program. In 2018, Office Depot launched Depot Difference, and Austin ISD has been generously impacted ever since. Office Depot has now donated 6,000 well-stocked backpacks to Austin ISD students and dozens of pallets of classroom supplies to teachers and staff. This year, the Start Proud program benefited directly T.A. Brown Elementary with a celebratory assembly event on August 15th. Students received backpacks and school supplies. An all-star teacher was awarded a special surprise package, and Office Depot announced it's hosting a $20,000 shopping spree for teachers and staff at one of their stores. It was really exciting, by the way. the principal of T.A. Brown decided that rather on picking one, she kind of had one of the students draw from a hat for the winning teacher. The winning teacher happened to be a veteran teacher who was just joining us from another country. So her welcome to the U.S. and to AISD was a palette of smart books and Chrome tablets and all this stuff. Tears were in her eyes. She was like, "I love America." Additionally, Office Depot provided Andrews Elementary with backpacks and supplies. Finally, the local Office Depot team provided space for volunteers to stuff nearly 15,000 backpacks for students and families across the district. As Trustee Gonzalez shared, this type of partnership is to absolutely be commended. It is vital to our success as a district. And if you could see the kids as they're all getting these new backpacks and as they're dancing and as there's a DJ, it just starts the year off wonderfully. So it's with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin School District recognizes and thanks Office Depot Start Proud for their partnership and support of all of our students, staff, and families.
Thank you. Thank you, Office Depot. All right, Dr. Reach.
Yeah. And I apologize. I let Michelle Wallace, who couldn't be here tonight, down by forgetting to pass out these, but I'll make sure for all of our wonderful partners, we have a little certificate for you as well. So I'm sorry that I missed that part, but we'll take care of it. So next item. We're here tonight to ask for formal recognition of the Travis County Summer Youth Employment Program. This program provides equitable opportunities for our students, focusing on 14 to 17-year-old students, extending up to age 22 for those who identify as having a disability. We want to give special thanks to our very own trustee, Ophelia Zapata, for encouraging the increased collaboration that led to this year's success, and the AISD staff who helped lead this work, including Creslin Fannin, Tammy Caesar, and Jesus Gold. Finally, we'd like to thank our partners at Travis County, and here tonight we have Pilar Sanchez, Trinity Bunton, Carolyn Wadane, Miguel Herrera Gutierrez, and we want to express our gratitude to the countless organizations and individuals who went out of their way to host student interns this summer. But most excitedly is that, even though unplanned, we also want to thank our student interns who showed up here tonight with their families and thank them for participating in this program. If you were a student, could any of our students stand? It is my pleasure to request formal recognition for from the trustees for the Travis County Summer Youth Enrollment Program.
Thank you, Trustee Zapata. If any of you have a conversation with Trustee Zapata for more than 5 minutes, you're going to hear about this program. So I'm so happy to ask her to recognize the Travis County Summer Youth Employment Program.
Thank you. It is my honor to be able to say this from this pulpit. It's been over 20 years when we created the program, and the original intent was to reduce the gangs activity and our youth getting into trouble in the summer. So I remember the first 100 jobs where the students were picking up trash that whole summer. When we evaluated with them, they said, "We don't want to pick up trash. We're more than that. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a teacher." So they challenged us to be more strategic on finding jobs that they wanted. So I thank the City of Austin and Jesus Garza, who's now the interim city manager, was the city manager at that time that created the program and put those funds aside. And so Pilar Sanchez, we go way back from the beginning of this program. So thank you, the city and county staff, for all that you do. And now that our superintendent has allowed and trustees are all in support of how we can go deeper with our students. And students, this is open for every one of you. So recruitment will begin in January, right, Ms. Trini? So y'all be on the lookout. Talk to your counselors if you want to earn $13 an hour. Okay, so on behalf of Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it is my honor to recognize the Travis County and City of Austin Summer Youth Employment Program. The Travis County Summer Youth Employment Program is a longstanding partnership with the City of Austin and has been enriching the lives of the community's young people for over 20 years. Thanks to a strengthened partnership with Austin ISD this summer, our talented students held 381 of the 750 internship spots available. Awesome. That's great. For up to 10 weeks each summer, participants are placed in a wide array of job settings, from local government agencies to nonprofit organizations and private sector businesses. So Gilbert Zavala, we're coming after all the chambers to begin opening more job slots next summer. So I hope you're paying attention. This invaluable experience provides them with a first-hand look at various career paths and helps them acquire essential life skills such as teamwork, problem solving, and communication. Those soft skills that are so important. Mentorship and career guidance are also key components ensuring that you are actively learning and growing throughout their time in the program. These types of partnerships are to be commended. It is with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District recognizes and thanks the Travis County and City of Austin Summer Youth Employment Program for its support of Austin ISD students and families. Thank you very much.
Trustee Singh, before we move on, we'd like to have one more recognition around this item.
Oh, no. Let's hear it.
Thank you. That's coming from me on behalf of the Travis County and City of Austin Summer Youth Employment Program. We just wanted to take a moment to thank Trustee Zapata personally for her longstanding support. As you heard her share that the beginnings of this program is with her connections to other individuals in the community that we've been able to get to where we are today and have so many youth involved. And she, as you all know, is a fierce advocate and continues to recruit and encourage, just as she shared, that we're coming for more opportunities. And that includes, I'm hearing Samsung's here, Salesforce is here. A lot of you are here ready to work with our kids, and we are so excited and thrilled and thankful to have such an advocate in the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Travis County and our city, and of course to our very own Trustee Sabata for this wonderful program. So our next item is under the President's Report. It's a little longer than usual, so get comfortable. So I'd like to really just take this opportunity to make a few brief comments regarding the Texas Education Agency's response to our request for the state to reconsider its appointment of a conservator for a special education program. So yesterday, as most of you probably know, the district received a proposal from TEA that suggests an alternative path forward for addressing the district's special education program. So first, I really want to thank Interim Superintendent Segura, Dr. Drew Robinette, and our district staff for thoroughly, thoughtfully, and rapidly deploying a comprehensive plan to build a transformational and sustainable new system for special education in Austin ISD. There's still much work to be done, but the district is making positive progress to address the challenges and shortcomings of previous years. And it's our intention that our families experience the benefits of this work and that our student outcomes reflect this hard work now and in the coming months. The TEA's proposal is not a conservator. The agreement specifies a monitor, which is one level below a conservator. But the proposal does come with conditions that will need to be carefully reviewed by our district leaders, board members, and legal counsel. We want to ensure that any requirements on our district staff, leadership, and trustees will not interfere with the momentum we've established in addressing special education in our district. We must also ensure that our community's values are preserved. It's worth noting just how far we've come, and I'd really like to acknowledge the work of my fellow trustees, including those on the Ad Hoc Special Education Committee, Trustees Foster, Boswell, and Whitley Chu. And really, your leadership, trustees, and contributions to this larger effort are certainly appreciated. Amongst those efforts, in May, as you may recall, the board added 2 scorecard measures to evaluate progress towards eliminating the backlog of special education evaluations. While the first public update on the backlog is scheduled for October and every 9 weeks after that, the board has requested an earlier update if possible, as we have been receiving requests for this information from the public. And in June, the board approved a budget for the 23-24 school year that makes strategic investments in special education services. We added an additional investment of $30.2 million to special education for a total district investment of $156 million in our 23-24 budget. There are several other areas of highlights, and I'm not sure if Mr. Segura was going to cover those or if he'd like me to do them. Can I brag on y'all?
You can brag as you wish.
Okay. So I do want to say pending evaluations have decreased by approximately 35% since January 2023. District staff tested approximately 80% more students this summer over the previous summer in 2022. Thank you, students. The district tripled our evaluation staff from 22 to 74, really more than tripled them, LSSPs and diagnosticians. So staff at every school completed 2 days of special education professional development last spring in preparation for additional training over the summer to support all learners. And the district added an additional 50 special education staff to accommodate the influx of students needing services. So we truly appreciate the hard work of your staff and your leadership, Superintendent Segura. So while we won't take any formal action on the TEA's proposal at today's meeting, we will discuss this in greater detail as a board during executive session today. In addition, I really just want to let people know that you can find the actual proposal on our special education webpage. So if you just Google Austin ISD Special Education, it's the very first link under the TEA section of that. And I believe the district also tweeted it out this morning as well. We invite our community to share input by emailing trustees@austinisd.org or by providing comments at upcoming meetings. I encourage all of you to review the proposal and share your concerns and questions with us. TEA's new proposal requires a response by September 29th, which we anticipate will take place at the September 21st board voting meeting. And as we always do, we will be reviewing that beforehand as well at the board info session. And we will announce if there are any additional meetings to engage, we'll announce those as well. Our goal is to minimize disruptions in Austin ISD's work to implement sustainable, transformational improvements to special education and support for our students and stay true to our values. So thank you very much. And at this time, I would like to have trustees provide committee reports. So Vice President Foster, we'll start with you. Can you report on the Board Policy Committee?
I can, and once again, there are several items that the Policy Committee has considered, and in each case, there are significant constituencies that are deeply interested in these, so there will be a bit of detail tonight. The Board Policy Committee convened Tuesday, August 15th at Central Office. Trustees Foster, Kaufman, and Hunter present. Present from the administration were Jacob Reach, Edna Butts, Brandy Hosek, and Ed Ramos. Also present, as these are public meetings, we are often joined by observers from Education Austin, which is really helpful and welcome. Chief Hosak, Talent Strategy, presented proposed revisions to DCD local employment practices at will employment. The recommended changes to policy come as one of the findings in the Gibson Consulting that review that we had recently to discontinue the Legal Review Committee and return the responsibility of employment decisions back to the Office of Talent Strategy. So Ms. Hosak will discuss the recommended changes with Education Austin, specifically in early September. Chief Financial Officer Ramos presented proposed revisions to CHE local around purchasing and acquisition, vendor disclosures, and contract revisions. This is to permit communication between a vendor and vendor's representatives and the district to discuss scope of work or engage in contract negotiations and review and prepare contracts. CHE local currently imposes a restricted contact period beginning upon the date of issuance of a solicitation and ending upon the execution of the awarded contract by all parties. Permitting discussions regarding scope of work and contract language prior to board's final approval will allow for faster, more efficient implementation of projects, saving time and money. Discussions between vendors and the district would not be legally binding upon the parties until the execution of a contract. The committee discussed creating a new provision in BDF local, board internal organization, the citizen advisory committees to distinguish between our advisory committees and our oversight committees, although there's one oversight committee. Because of the function of an oversight committee, the proposed revisions provide that the members of such committee may serve consecutive two-year terms subject to renewal by the appropriate trustee. So in other words, you can call it no term limits, but with the understanding that the committee members serve at will of the trustees. So it becomes incumbent upon the trustees to be in relationship with our appointees, and if we're ready to move to another person, it will be up to the trustee to do that. They will not have an expiration of term. By contrast, and that is just in the case of the Oversight Committee. By contrast, members of an advisory committee may serve one two-year term with the option to serve one additional term. The committee also considered revisions to FNG local, students' rights and responsibilities, student and parent complaints, grievances. This would be to provide that grievances that relate to an appeal of transfer denial will be considered upon written submissions and that all others shall be afforded oral argument. The party appealing matters not related to transfer denials will have the option to forego the oral argument and request submission of its appeal to the board in writing, making things a little less cumbersome. The change will ensure that the board affords grievance the same rights in similar situations. Finally, the committee considered TASB Update 121. Most of the local policy recommendations in this update are intended to clarify current policy language. The committee agreed with most of the revisions suggested and is making recommendations for slight edits in 3 of the policies. Keeping in mind that all of these items will come to us during an information session where questions can be asked, folks can come up, there can be discussion at that point. Keeping in mind that all of these will come to the information session before a voting session, all of the policies discussed are recommended to be placed on the board's September consent agenda. But again, all items that go to consent, our hope is that everyone's on board, everyone agrees to it. If tweaks need to be made, the information session's the time for that consideration so that when we get to the voting meeting, we can move quickly through the consent items. Committee adjourned at 3:09. It felt like 3:09 24 hours later, but it was only a 2-hour meeting, 3:09. The next policy committee meeting is set for Thursday, September 14th at 3:30 p.m. And as always, these are open meetings, so the public is welcome to attend.
Thank you. Trustee Whitley Chu, can you share the report for the Austin Ed Fund?
Yes. Yesterday, the Austin Ed Fund visited educators who are receiving funds to support their creative ideas to serve students. Trustee Gonzalez, Trustee Hunter, Trustee Boswell, Trustee Zapata, and myself got to be on these teams with community members and board members and people who love Austin ISD. 70 unique projects received a total of $400,000. So again, our board members, community volunteers, and supporters, including Representative Lloyd Doggett and Dr. Libby Doggett, visited each project site to congratulate students, along with Superintendent Matias, of course. Superintendent Segura. The Ed Fund is preparing for our annual Inspire the Future luncheon on Monday, October 30th. The luncheon celebrates Austin ISD students and staff and will feature an address by Interim Superintendent Segura. Sponsorships and tickets are still available. For a list of this year's funded projects and information on the luncheon, including sponsorships and ticket sales, visit austinedfund.org. The Ed Fund Board last met on August 17th, and we will meet again next on October 19th.
Thank you. So I will report on the School Safety and Security Committee. So we had an official meeting last Tuesday right here in the board auditorium. We met in person on August 22nd, 2023 from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. We had 2 members who expressed interest for the co-chair position for this committee, which we'll be voting on at our next meeting. Dr. Reach, the Chief of Governmental Relations and Board Services, gave a presentation on HB3 and some of the changes related to that. We had Oscar Adams, our Director of Discipline Standards and Accountability, talking about the disciplinary changes for students after the passing of HB 114, and we're going to be hearing more about discipline later today. Ali Gillarducci, our Chief Officer for Communications and Community Engagement, talked to us about gun storage safety, and that is per the HB3 requirement. We were fortunate to have Lieutenant John Pickford, the AISD Police Department, deliver a presentation to the committee about a possible anonymous reporting application through Campus Crime Stoppers with the Austin Police Department. And this is very cool, and it's really I know it's going to help me as a parent feel a lot safer, and I'm excited to see how that all develops. Lieutenant John Pickford also gave a presentation on gun safety on campuses in the school year 22-23. So the next scheduled meeting for the School Safety and Security Committee is going to be on September 19th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. And we're going to be doing it at the Alternative Learning Center. Our committee really has expressed an interest in seeing different places and schools on our campuses and getting a sense of where our students are learning and where, understand better the context so that we can do a better job as a committee. So, trustees, are there any other committee or training reports to share tonight? Okay. Next is the superintendent's report.
All right, good evening, President Singh and members of the board. Tonight, we are going to start off with the superintendent's report a little bit differently. I want to start our evening with a special story honoring Haley Petrosky, a pre-K teacher at Menchaca Elementary School. Haley not only embodies the values we hold dear in our district, perseverance, empathy, and the pursuit of excellence, but also symbolizes the unbreakable bond that ties our Austin ISD family together. So if we could play that.
My name is Haley Petrosky. I am a pre-K 4 teacher for Menchaca Elementary. I have been there for 13 years.
Good.
Well, I was student teacher and I was here at Menchaca, and so I was very excited. So I did a TA for 1.5 years, and then I finally decided I was going to be an actual first grade. Actually, it was first grade. It was great. It was for 1 year. I loved it. I know they needed some kindergarten teachers because there wasn't a lot. So I decided, great, I'll do it. And then I loved kindergarten. That day, we're almost done. We're about to be done. And we did a graduation day. And we sang and we cried. And the kids were crying. The families were crying. And then I left that day. We left at like an hour or so. My head was kind of hurting. I was very tired, I thought, because of the graduation day. It's always a lot. So I went to the nurse and just got an Advil, and then I just don't remember at all. So I think some teachers figured out that she had a stroke. So one teacher actually went to the hospital with me. I think I was there for 4 weeks for Dell. My speech was 0, my legs and arms 0. I don't remember at all at the hospital, but they decided we're going to a different hospital, a small hospital, and then I'm gonna be there for 4 weeks after. So I was there more doing therapy. Yeah, so we had to do words, and like the same thing as we do for kindergarten. I was like, we're doing words. We had to do paragraph, a little paragraph. We had to do sounds, a lot of sounds. The sounds was the hardest one, and writing and reading, and like everything with LA, you know what I mean? That's what we do. So it took a lot. Chop, chop. See, I can do it.
I know, you keep changing it too.
Chop. I can see it. I've always been a really great teacher, and I want to be more. I want to be a bigger teacher every year and do better and better every time. So I'm ready and excited. It's going to be a little nervous for me, and I think for the kids too. I think they're going to be nervous as well. But we are going to play, we're going to have fun, we are going to do anything that we can do to help those kids, and for me.
Yeah, we can come. Just incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You have
So on behalf of the Austin Independent School District and our Board of Trustees, it's my honor to extend a warm welcome back home to Miss Haley Petrosky. Incredible. All right.
Let's stop there.
Yeah, can we, is that good enough? Are we done? So it's been a busy few weeks, and we've kicked off the school year with lots of great celebrations and fanfare. During the first weeks of school, we visited campuses and spent time with many great leaders, met student ambassadors, watched a math lesson that involved the use of VR headsets, which I've nenever used, I've tried, but not well, and watched a ballet folklore performance. Sixth graders at Gus Garcia Young Men's Leadership Academy participated in a rite of passage where they learned how to tie a tie. Students gathered in the cafeteria for a tie ceremony, which marked an important moment on their journey to become leaders. I had the distinct pleasure of being with these young men this year, and I will never forget this amazing opportunity. It was awesome. And I only know one knot. I learned my second knot there with them, so it was awesome. These were great visits, and I love being on our campuses and meeting with our staff and students. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the athletic season has begun, which means the return of Friday Night Lights. It's important to remember that Friday Night Lights isn't just about football. It includes band, cheer, and so many more. This season is off to a great start, and we are excited for all our high school and middle schools as they embark on the 2023 season. It was a pleasure to attend the Taco Shack Bowl with our fans from Anderson and McCallum High School. We want to take some time this evening to share with the board and the community our plans for the months ahead. We are calling this Safety Spotlight, a focus on mental health and student safety. In the first weeks of school, our community was struck by two tragedies, one at Anderson High School and the other at Travis Early College High School. We want our students and staff to know that we, Austin ISD, are here to support you. Please know that support is available at all campuses, and there are adults in every building that are available and are there to make sure that you have someone to talk to. At each campus, we offer short-term individual counseling. We're also able to provide referrals with Austin ISD school mental health centers. We can also provide referrals for local mental health and crisis support services and grief support. In the coming weeks, you'll hear about the vertical team community meetings during the month of October. The purpose of these meetings is to ensure our community has an awareness of these services, shared understanding of how we respond in times of crisis. And we also want to make sure our community can provide input and help us grow and get better. Our mission remains the same. We are here to serve our Austin ISD family. An important reminder, Austin ISD schools and facilities are inclusive and safe places for all our students. I'd also like to take a moment to talk about heat safety. We are in the process of updating our heat safety guidelines. We are also ensuring all secondary campuses have wet bulb globe temperature tools, otherwise known as WBGT. That's a new acronym that I learned. WBGT are used to provide the most accurate reading on heat stress. We are also reinforcing water and break schedules with athletic and fine arts. This includes all sports, drill, dance, and cheer teams. Anyone participating in outdoor sports during these hot months is encouraged to take breaks and stay hydrated. Yesterday, we received a notification. This is again regarding a special education update, as President Singh had mentioned, regarding special education services. As President Singh had mentioned, TA has proposed an alternative pathway. We're going to continue to work with the board and evaluate the options before us. One of the things I want to communicate to our community is the work that started in January. All of that effort is continuing on. We have a plan. We are continuing to execute that plan with fidelity, and that work will not stop. As we discuss options, we'll certainly provide opportunities for community to engage with us. We are looking at next week for our first hearing, I think, We don't have the date quite set, but we're very close. Once we have that, we'll be sure to send it out to the community, but we are looking at having something scheduled as early as next week. Tonight, we also would like to provide an update, an overview regarding COVID-19. We know there's been an uptick in cases over the last few weeks, and we want to remind everyone of best practices to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and the flu. If you are unwell, please monitor your systems, stay home, and test yourself for COVID-19. Take care and return to work only when you have a negative COVID test and are fever-free for at least 24 hours without taking fever-reducing medications. We also want to remind folks you can vaccinate for flu and for COVID. Lastly, stay informed by following our Austin ISD COVID dashboard at www.austinisd.org/dashboard, monitoring Austin Public Health communication, and don't forget to inform your campus if you test positive for COVID-19. We're also excited to share that we are one step closer to having an interlocal agreement with the City of Austin. On August 22nd, the City of Austin Planning Commission approved the interlocal agreement, which helped us build and improve our schools efficiently. On September 12th, the city will vote on the interlocal agreement. There are still some refinements that will be taken forward, but we're well positioned and think that these last adjustments will be easily adopted. And last but not least, I want to tell everyone about an exciting upcoming event. Austin ISD is hosting our second annual district-wide showcase on Saturday, September 23rd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Palmer Event Center. This event will include external community partners as exhibitors, internal departments and programs. Every Austin ISD school will be represented. It will also include community service providers, student performances, free school supplies, and various interactive activities, and a partridge in a pear tree. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. Super excited about the event. And that concludes my presentation this evening. Thank you to everyone for a great start to the school year. A long way to go, but definitely think we're headed in the right direction. So thank you, trustees.
President Singh and Superintendent Segura, can I just clarify for the community watching that the TEA letter and response is not on the agenda tonight due to the timing of receiving it? It's not because we don't want to talk about it publicly. It's because the agenda was set in advance of the meeting with 72-hour notice. Can you just clarify that?
Yes, that's right, Trustee Kaufman. We just received the letter yesterday, and to be in compliance with our Open Meetings Act and the processes that we have in place, we're not able to discuss it today openly, but we are going to be identifying opportunities to discuss it with our community in the near future, as early as next week. And we are going to be having that meeting next week with our community.
And I think I saw on the slide an actual date of September 7th. So is that confirmed, or?
So we have, the administration can support that. I think we're still trying to get the final, schedules confirmed from all of our trustees. We know that we have the support. We just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to attend.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Yeah, 7th is a soft. Yeah, it's soft. I want to get it out there. We're pretty close.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank
you, and thanks for the question. All right. I think you're next. Oh, no, I'm next. Trustees, are there any additional questions for Superintendent Segura? Yes, Trustee Lugo.
Let's see. So I think with the mental health update, maybe just a point for clarification that at last week's joint subcommittee meeting between Travis County Commissioners, Austin ISD, and the City of Austin, we discussed mental health in particular and kind of how to continue to strengthen what we have and really look at where the gaps are. And if I can just add to that, it's been a long week. I think it was Tuesday. I had an opportunity to hear from some high schoolers, and one of the students said that adults, and I'm paraphrasing here, that adults worry more about how kids are going to hurt other kids instead of worrying about how they're going to hurt themselves. And I thought that was incredibly powerful and really gives us a lot to think about in terms of how do we support our students, their families, and our staff as well.
Thank you. So our next item is a STAR update and accountability refresh. So Mr. Segura, would you please introduce our next item?
Absolutely. I'd like to ask Dr. Reach, Chief of Government Relations and Board Services, to come up and share the update, as well as introducing the rest of the team.
Thank you so much, President Singh, Board of Trustees, and Interim Superintendent Segura. I'm excited to introduce some of my colleagues tonight to take us through our presentation. We have Carolyn Hanshin, our Executive Director of Accountability and Assessment, and Dylan Fannin, our Director of Accountability. Did I say the title right?
Fannin, yeah, Director.
Fannin, ruined everything.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Like you said, my name's Dylan Finan. We're going to talk to you tonight about the 2023 accountability updates and what's called the State of Texas Academic Assessment of Academic Readiness Reset, or STAR Reset. If we change slides, we're going to start with the accountability update. There's three parts of the Texas Education Code that provide the framework or foundation of our A to F accountability system. You can see the codes mentioned up there, but their goal is to apply rigor for all students, fairness for all schools, and transparency to the public. And what this has translated into is into our current A to F accountability system. This system has 3 domains, and the campuses receive 4 scores and 4 letter grades among those 3 domains. Domain 1 measures student achievement, and at the middle school and elementary level, it uses a STAR assessment to do that. At the high school level, it uses STAR assessment, CCMR, which is career, college, and military readiness scores, and also grad rates to do that. In Domain 2, campuses receive 2 scores and 2 letter grades. One is for Domain 2A, which is called academic growth. And what that does is that it compares a student's score in the previous year on the STAR assessment to how they scored in the current year, and it determines whether they've improved enough to get what's called growth or growth points. They also have an area called 2B, which is relative performance. What that does is it takes a campus and compares it to other campuses that serve a similar percentage of students experiencing poverty that it does, or they call that percent ECD. And what happens is if they perform better than other campuses of the same percent ECD, then their 2B score will be higher. If they score lower than other campuses with a similar percent ECD, their 2B score would be lower. The last domain is Domain 3. This is the way Texas meets its federal requirements, and it looks at all those metrics in Domain 1 and 2, but it looks at them disaggregated by demographic group. And what they do is they take the scores in these 3 domains, and they use that to calculate a campus's overall score and rating, which is a letter grade. And how they do that is they look at their Domain 1 score, their Domain 2A score, and their Domain 2B score, and they drop the lowest 2 scores, and they keep the highest score, and that becomes 70% of a campus's overall score. And then their score in Domain 3 becomes 30% of a campus's overall score, and then that translates into a campus's rating. Now, one of the other mandates the state has is to keep the A to F accountability system relatively stable over time. The reasoning behind this is so that district and campus leaders have the ability to implement programs that can improve student outcomes in relation to the accountability system. So for the past 5 years, the system has remained relatively consistent. And in 2023, we're in what's called a periodic reset year, where they're adjusting those rules. There's been a lot of changes over this past year that are going to be applied to this past year's students, and we're going to discuss some of those this evening. How I'd like to discuss them is by looking at what TEA calls the what-if ratings, or the 2022 what-if ratings. I'm going to start by sharing a quote from TEA in response to these 2022 what-if ratings. They said, because of the A to F refresh, school year 22-23 ratings will be based on a different set of rules than previous A to F ratings. 2022 ratings and the 2023 ratings cannot be compared side by side. It is possible a campus with an A rating in 2022 may improve in 2023, yet receive a B rating. I want us to think about that for a minute because that's really the context in which the rest of this presentation is made. And what that means is that learning in a school can be better in 2023. Students can learn more in 2023, yet the rating they receive from the state will be lower, is what they're saying. So what if ratings apply the new 2023 rules to 2022 campus results and show the impact of the proposed changes and provide a more meaningful year-to-year comparison when actually compared to the 2023 ratings that will be released? One important clarifier I need to make is these what-if ratings do not replace a campus's actual 2022 rating. If we look at what these what-if ratings look like across the state of Texas, when they performed this analysis, 66% of ratings across the state of Texas remain the same. So that means when they applied the 2023 rules to 2022 metrics, the rating didn't change at all. But for 28% of campuses, their rating actually went down when they applied these new rules. And for 6% of campuses, the ratings actually went up. In Austin ISD, we saw 68% of our ratings stay the same, 22% of them go down, and 9% go up. Now, looking at ratings is meaningful, but it doesn't really tell you the whole story. If you really want to see how these new rule changes impact a campus's score, you have to look at specifically how does this impact scores on a campus. Because remember, a rating could take up to 10-point shift for that rating to change. So if we look at this more granularly by looking at scores, we look at this scatter plot here. And I'm going to take a moment to just get us familiar with the scatter plot. On the x-axis, the bottom axis, you have a campus's actual 2022 score. On the y-axis, you have their what-if score. Each dot represents a campus in Austin ISD, and the size of the dot represents their enrollment, the number of students. The color of the dot tells you if their what-if score went up, went down, or stayed the same. What I want to bring your attention to is the vertical line that's a dotted blue line. That's 85. And what we see if we look at campuses who had a score below 85, an overall score below 85, a large majority of them saw their score go down by more than 3 points. What this means is that the new rule changes are more likely to negatively impact schools who had an overall score of 85. And if you look at campuses who had an overall score above 85, it is much more variable. Some of their scores went up, some stayed the same, some dropped. But what's important to point out is only 4 of the campuses who had a score above 85 did it drop 3 points or more. So it's not highly negatively impacting campuses who score above 85 in Austin ISD. So what are the rules that led to these patterns we saw in that last graph? At the high school level, they made dramatic changes to scaling. So in 2022, if a campus had 60% of their students considered CCMR ready, that would scale to a grade of an A. In 2023, this past year, if 60% of their students are CCMR ready, that scales to a D. And they need 88% of their students to be considered CCMR ready to earn an A. What's even more interesting about this is these are students who graduated in 2022. So we had no chance to influence their CCMR outcomes. If you look at what happened at elementary and middle schools, most of the changes were in domain 2A, where a majority of our elementary and middle schools get the highest part of their overall rating. And if it's harder for individual campuses to achieve academic growth in 2A under the new rules, and I've listed the reasons there why. When we look at the what-if report, we saw that 79% of campuses' 2A scores decreased when the new rules were applied. There's also been significant changes to domain 3B. In the past, they looked at 14 different demographic groups. Moving forward, they're only going to look at 4, and there's going to be a very specific focus on low-performing groups. They also changed the point system. In the past, you either earned all the points or lost all the points, depending on whether or not you met a specific target. They've changed that to what's a gradated point system, where you could earn 0 to 4 points. And in order to earn the 4 points, you have to hit a target that's been set for 2037, 2038. Now, they've also changed how they're going to calculate district ratings. In the past, they treated the district as one large campus, and every student result counted equally going into that district rating. Now they're going to look at campuses' ratings proportionally to their enrollment. Now, enrollment is only students 3 through 12. What we've put together here is a tree chart. On this tree chart, it shows you proportionally how much each campus will contribute to the overall district rating. Some main points I can point out is overall, you'll see high schools are going to contribute about 42% to the overall district rating, middle schools about 26 to 27% of the overall district rating, and then 31% for elementaries. Another important point is if we look at our 4 largest high schools and our 6 largest middle schools, which is Austin High, Aikens, Bowie, Anderson, and then Goriski Middle School, Keeling, Murchison, Small, Lamar, and Lively, those 10 campuses are going to contribute 1/3 of our overall district rating. One more quote. Could you go back for a moment? Based on the What If report, this new methodology would have dropped our overall district score from an 88 to a 79C. So we would have dropped the letter grade in 2022 had these rules been applied to those performance measures. What you see here is a timeline of when TEA is releasing information related to the accountability reset and the STAR 2.0 refresh. Everything in blue has already passed, and everything in coral is what's coming up next. If you look at an important date I want to point out is September 28th. That is when they're going to release our ratings. This is 6 weeks later than when they normally release ratings, and the reason it's been delayed so long is because of all these accountability changes that happened over this past year. So I talked a moment ago about these accountability changes. This is a unique year because they're not only changing the accountability system, they're also changing the test using to assess students at the same time, and historically they haven't done those two things at the same time. And one of the reasonings behind the What If ratings TEA has proposed is that if you look at a 2022 What If rating and compare that to a campus's current 2023 rating, that's an apples to apples comparison because they both use the new rules. The fact that they changed this STAR test suggests that that may not be an apples to apples comparison because the kids in 2022 took a totally different test than the kids in 2023. Now, what changed in the 2023 STAR test? There's been significant changes in the performance level cut scores, and we're going to look at those in a moment. A maximum of 75% of the questions can be multiple choice. The other 25% are either technology-enhanced items or constructed response items. And what this meant is that in reading all RLA classes, there was a writing component on every test, which there wasn't in the past. 100% of the test is supposed to be online with very minimal exceptions. And all assessments except ELA 1 and 2 have more points assessed with 7 points on average across all assessments. If you'd like to try one of these tests for yourself, there's a link there. TEA has them online so you can experience them for yourself. TEA messaging is that the assessments in any given grade level are not any more rigorous than what they were in the past. If you look closely at the cut scores between the different performance levels, that tells us a different story. And what I mean by cut score is what is a score that stands between did not meets and approaches? The score that's the difference between approaches and meets or meets and masters. If we look at those cut scores real carefully, what they're saying doesn't make much sense. If we look at reading RLA in grade 4, for example, the cut score for approaches was 56 in 2022. That has dropped to 31% in 2023. What's interesting there is that's only 6 percentage points above the guessing range, meaning that students only have to do 6 points better than guessing in order to pass the test or achieve approaches grade level. Now, if we look at what the trends are at approaches grade level across all tests, the highest 2023 cut score for approaches grade level is Science 5 at 46%. That's the highest. So the most a student would have to score to pass any of the STAR tests would be a 46%. If we look at what it was in 2022, 13 out of 20 cut scores for approaches grade level were above 50%. This year, no one even has to get a 50 or higher to hit approaches. Now, most people would say, well, Dylan, if the scores are so much lower, doesn't that mean the test is easier? No, they had to drop the cut scores so low to keep the level of students at approaches the same as it was in the previous year. That means that this year's test is probably much more rigorous than the test students experienced in 2022. Now, it's also interesting to look at this in terms of high testers, not just those who may fail or just barely pass. It's good to look at it. What does this do to our highest performing testers? So when we look at cut scores for master's grade level, the cut score at master's grade level for history was 64%. In 2022, the lowest cut score to achieve master's grade level was a 78. And 17 out of 20 of them were 80% or higher. In 2023, only 3 tests had a cut score for master's grade level at 80% or above. So this suggests that it is also a more rigorous test for our highest performing students. We'll let you think about that for a minute. While it may not be any more rigorous to achieve a given performance level, changes in the percent cut scores at each performance level would suggest that 16 out of 20 tests are more rigorous in the context of student experience. So when a student is sitting down to take that test, they recognize it as a more rigorous test. What we're going to share with you now are some of the results from this 2023 STAR assessment cycle. We're going to share 2 things. One is a longitudinal analysis looking at performance in 2019, 2022, and 2023, because we're still talking about performances in terms of the pre-COVID and post-COVID era, to see what that disruption to education caused. We're going to start by looking at EOC results. And what we see is that in humanities, our performance has rebounded to its pre-COVID levels. If we look at the STEM subject areas, which would be algebra and biology, we have not rebounded to our pre-COVID levels. And when we look at algebra, we're still significantly below our pre-COVID level performance. We're going to take a look real quick at this is reading in grade 3. We have so many more assessments at the elementary and middle school level. You have access to the visualization, so you can look at every grade level and subject if you wish, but we're only looking at grade 3 reading here. If we look at English administration of this test, we can see that at approaches grade level, it didn't seem to impact student performance. We stayed pretty level throughout the pre-COVID and post-COVID era. But what we did see is a drop in the numbers of students achieving master's grade level, and we haven't rebounded to pre-COVID levels in master's grade level performance in the English administration. If we look at the Spanish administration of the reading tests, we have not rebounded to pre-COVID levels in terms of performance in grade 3. Now we're going to look at EOC results for Austin ISD, Region 13, which is other central Texas districts, and Texas as a whole. When we look at these results, what we see is that generally we underperform Region 13 and Texas as a whole, with the exception of U.S. history. But what's interesting is we usually perform better at master's grade level, so we have a lot of high-performing students that are doing better than other districts in Central Texas and the state, but we also have more students that are not reaching approaches grade level. When we look at grade 3 reading again for math and reading, what we find in reading for English administration, we're outperforming Central Texas districts and Texas as a whole. We have more students at master's grade level, and we're pretty much on par at approaches. In math, we are on par at master's, but once again, that same trend, we have more students that are not achieving approaches grade level in math in grade 3. When we look at the Spanish administration of the reading test, we are underperforming Central Texas districts and the state as a whole, both in math and reading. So the main reflections we'd like you to take away from this is that the preliminary what-if ratings released by TEA suggest that campuses with an overall accountability score of 85 or less in Austin ISD will be more negatively impacted by the 2023 accountability rules changes. In terms of measuring academic growth, rule changes place greater emphasis on movement between performance levels than on individualized student growth. And another thing I think is important to mention here is that not all growth is measured equally. It's harder for lower performing students to be recognized for their growth than it is higher performing students. In terms of STAR 2.0 refresh, overall the percent of questions students need to answer correctly to achieve a given performance level dropped at each performance level. Changes to performance level cut scores indicate that students are experiencing more rigorous STAR assessment in 2023. And on STAR 3 through 8, the percentage of students achieving master's grade level has decreased in both Austin ISD and the state as a whole. So these changes to the test are also impacting our highest performing students across the state.
This concludes our presentation.
Yeah, well, happy to take any questions.
That was an excellent presentation. Thank you. You're speaking my language. Trustees, are there any questions? Mr. Boswell.
Yeah, I want to say first, thank you for making a huge, complicated, confusing bunch of information very accessible for our board and our community. I think it's incredibly important that people understand kind of how this data, where it comes from and what it reflects, and translating it from our individual student to the campus level, to the district level and the state level. So thank you for that. I have a question for the administration, which is how will families on the 28th, how will families get the information, and what form will it come to families? You know, I know people are receiving individual student performance, but that campus level and district level performance, and what more will be done to make sure people out in our community, including our families and our staff, understand the meaning of the letter they see, the difference.
Thank you. So when those results go out, as mentioned, it'll be both the accountability score for this last year, but also the what if for the year prior. So we know that we kind of have twice the amount of work to explain when we share with families. So we, of course, want to first and foremost prepare our campuses for the results that are forthcoming, and how they can speak to their campus and speak to their staff, and how they can share that information and share kind of a summary of what Dylan was able to share today on some of those changes to better understand what does that rating mean for the campus. We also want to just make sure that for our overall campus and community, for our overall community, that those results are accessible. So we will, of course, have information on our website. I know that we'll have information in our newsletters, in our social media, talking about the results for Austin ISD, what it means for Austin ISD, and how to look at those scores. But most importantly, I want to mention that when we're sharing these results, we know that this is just one part of the multiple different measures that we look at for our campus to determine how is that campus doing. And we want to make sure that our families know that as well. This tells one part of that story. We need to tell the other parts of the story as well, like the social supports that we offer at our campuses, the extracurricular activities that we offer at our campuses, the wonderful teachers and special programs that we have at our campus also tell part of that story on how our campus is doing.
Thanks. Any other trustees? Trustee Foster.
I'm just curious as to how easy it will be, or how possible it will be to sort of get apples to apples. In other words, when we see the results for our school district and we're trying to make sense of it, the broader context of all the school districts might help us. Is it easy, is it possible to turn this into an apples to apples comparison so that we understand ourselves in a broader context?
I think since they changed the accountability system and the assessment that fuels the system at the same time, it's like changing two variables in an experiment at the same time and then trying to determine which one had the effect. So I don't think we can have an apples to apples comparison, because the test in 2022 is different than the test in 2023. And for elementary and middle school, for instance, that is 100% of what fuels the accountability ratings. It's just broken up and looked at in different ways. So I don't think we can get a true apples to apples. If you're trying to get a comparison from 2022 to 2023, that is a true apples to apples comparison.
Actually, I was, so if we're District X, District Y had the same set of new conditions.
Gotcha. So an apples to apples comparison with other districts. In terms of the 2023 ratings, yeah, I think you can. I mean, it's just what we've always done in the past.
And as a district, we always look at what we call Texas Urban Council districts, the other urban districts across Texas, because we believe that gives us a good comparison of districts that have similar characteristics to our own. But likewise, we also want to compare with other Central Texas districts in the state as a whole.
I think that's going to be illuminative.
Yeah. When the state releases the ratings, they will release a statewide list with all the districts and all the schools, and they will have the what if, the final what if ratings applied to 2022 and the 23 ratings. They'll also be on their website, txschools.gov, which is a nice website. You can find any school and have a nice graphical representation. Those will be right there on the front page for every school and every district in the state. So that, but as Dylan said, though, it's not truly apples to apples. It's maybe apples to oranges because of the STAR test, but it's as close as we can get to compare to last year and to see if we made progress. I think, we're going to see statewide probably a decline in scores and a decline in ratings that will be, across the board. It's not just going to be our district.
Thank you.
Trustee Kaufman?
Yes, thank you. So I think we might need the academics team to join in on this answer, but I just really want to help the board and the public understand how we can interpret the Spanish data that you shared and the unique nature of Spanish reading data in terms of STAR. I think you would agree that this data does not necessarily mean that the students read less skillfully in Spanish than in English, but there's unique nature to how the test works and who was, so if could someone please just comment on helping us understand and interpret that Spanish reading data that you shared?
Want me to? Yeah, I think there's several things that kind of fueled the disparities we see there. If we look at cut scores again for Spanish reading, in the past, cut scores were always below what the English reading was, and this year, in 2023, there was a difference there. There were some Spanish cut scores that were higher than the English ones, so that could have an impact on some of the trends we're seeing. I think what's also, for me, important for people to understand is the structure of the STAR assessment is very good at placing students into categories about performance, but it's not designed to elicit a student's best performance. And that's two different things, right? So I don't think those results represent the best performance of our students, particularly in Spanish reading.
Did that answer your question, or is there a part that we left unaddressed?
Well, I think just understanding a little bit about the decisions made about what language to test students in, and just, because in the STAR, students are tested in either Spanish or English, and a school has to make that decision. And so that's what I'd just like to have a little better understanding for us and for the public to understand how do those decisions around the language of assessment, impact that data.
Right, so it's an LPAC decision, so it's a committee decision based on each student and their academic performance. I do think what Dylan said does have some validity, especially now that we're factoring in short constructed responses. And so we are eagerly awaiting some samples to see what we are looking for when scoring the responses. We know even from when we had fourth grade writing and seventh grade, well, fourth grade writing, not seventh, fourth grade writing, that sometimes there were questions about the Spanish writing essays and high-level vocabulary and what vocabulary met each indicator in the rubric. And so I personally do think that factors in because, again, this is the first time we've taken the assessment. We've had short constructed responses. We didn't necessarily have a lot of models to say this is a 0, this is a 1, and so forth. And so, and we know that sometimes there is a lag in Spanish in getting the information out to us.
Okay, thank you. And I would just like to, note, I would appreciate, continued look, and I know that this is happening, but at the decisions made around testing, because one piece around the Spanish and English data is many of our best readers in Spanish are taking the test in English, right? And that's not always a decision that matches the student's best interests. And so moving from a transition belief that the goal of our education is to move a kid from Spanish to English, not to develop both languages at a high level. When we continue that, and you see that in the data. When you look at my campus, you see we have some campuses that are still moving from testing several kids in Spanish in 3rd grade to some students in Spanish in 4th grade to 0 students in Spanish in 5th grade. And that doesn't match our dual language program, that doesn't match the best interests of the children, and you see the results dropping on those campuses for emergent bilingual students, from many kids succeeding in 3rd grade to fewer students succeeding in 5th grade. So I think that those decisions around language of testing are essential for us to really represent our emergent bilingual students well, and also to give them their best shot at success. And I do appreciate that the Spanish data is in here, but I think for STAR, the most telling data is the combined English and Spanish, because each student is only tested once, and it's, can you read or can you not read? Can you do math or can you not do math? It's not a language test. And so I think that I just want to caution that data, because traditionally we've tended, if kids are doing well at reading, we test them in English. If they're struggling in reading, they just got here, or they're just like learning, then we test them in Spanish. So the Spanish data always looks lower. So I just want to caution everyone who's looking at this data to not judge based on the Spanish testing that our kids perform poorly in Spanish. Maybe they do, but that data doesn't tell us that. So thank you. I would also, I just want to, I mentioned some of this at the last, a recent meeting, but I really, in the spirit of transparency, in terms of the goal of this test, I think these test results can be very confusing for families, right? Because just like for schools, hey, we were an A school last year and we got better and now we're a B school. Or my kid was advanced, he had master's grade level last year. He learned a lot about reading this year and now he's at MEATS grade level. What happened? And so the test scores don't necessarily represent what our families actually care about, which is, can my kid read? Are they getting a good experience? So I just hope that we can continue to look for, like, as we respond to the external accountability system, which we need to, that we continue to look at our own internal accountability systems to make sure we're measuring what matters most for our kids. So for example, can they decode, right? Can our kids, so that when they don't pass the STAR test, that doesn't mean they cannot read anything, right? But some of our kids cannot read anything, and they're graduating high school without being able to read anything. So we need to know that, right? And not just, oh, well. So can they decode? Can they comprehend the text that they're reading? Can they think critically and answer higher level thinking questions about what they read? And then can they do really well on a standardized test, which is a separate question. And then also, do they love reading? Are they reading for choice? Can they separate fact from misinformation, which is one of the most important literacy skills that we have today, is separating fact from unfact. So just knowing that the STAR data is important, but it's so much it doesn't tell us, and I think that what our parents need to know and receive information are those more important questions, right? Not, so yeah, I'll leave it at that, but thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaufman. Sounds like you know a little bit about the subject. I don't know, but I really appreciate your insightful comments.
Care about the subject.
I know. Any other trustees? Trustee Zapata?
So I had a question. So wasn't this year the first year where the students had to do the test online? Yes. Okay, so was that also taken in consideration? And is that something that our schools are putting into practice and testing so that it doesn't become an issue of trying to figure that out when it comes to testing, that it becomes a norm of testing?
Yes, so last year they were offered interim assessments throughout the course of all last year, and it was still optional, but they had access. Each campus got to choose whether or not they took fully online interim assessments through the district platform that was meant to mimic what STAR would look like. And this year they took short cycle assessments, and every campus had to take that online throughout the course of the year, and that platform was supposed to mimic the STAR assessment. So in terms of scaffolding what that online testing experience would be, as a district, we did that through our short cycle assessment program.
Well, do you think that could be part of why our kids might have not done as well? I mean, just, I don't know if that was weighed in on that.
I mean, I think it's possible that it could have influenced results, certainly.
Yeah.
Particularly, I mean, when you think about an elementary student having a technology-enhanced item where they have to maybe select 2 right choices instead of just one, that doesn't necessarily fit the structure that they've been trained for
Right.
in elementary over time. So I think in situations like that, definitely, I think that could have had an influence. Can I make broad generalizations on what I think that influence was? No.
You're right. So that's just one suggestion. How do we help them to prepare, and how do we make that part of their the norm so that they're not afraid or and can really understand how to do that test and be comfortable doing it. I don't think it's because they don't know it. Sometimes even when I was going to ACC, I hated doing those tests. But it's hard. So that's one thing. The other thing is presenting it to the parents. I mean, this is a lot. It's very good presentation, but this is not the kind of presentation we would ask you to do to parents. I think it's just having them understand their own child's results, understanding how to read that, so that they then begin to know how to support the teacher and figure out ways as parents and community to help the students in that way. So, and that just brings me back to when I remember when we were doing the priority school fight, we parents never knew, well, we knew our kids took a test, but we didn't know it was that important. You know, at the end of the year, we didn't know that dictated how much money our kids would get at that campus and all that. That still exists. So figuring out how do we do that school by school and really engage parents in a more, in person, not just giving them the papers because, a lot of parents don't read it. We don't understand how to read it and what it says. So that's just another suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zapata. Any other trustees? I have a couple of questions. I wanted to look at slide 16. By the way, these data visualizations are awesome. So I imagine this is like kind of a new thing, right? At some point, we need to see a live, interactive presentation because y'all have really put some tremendous work into this, and it's super helpful.
So, President Singh, we have that ability. It's just every time the data loads, it takes a good 20 seconds.
Oh, I witnessed it. But
yeah,
it's worth it. It's worth the wait.
It's worth the wait.
Maybe you could just put that banner up.
Yeah.
It's worth the wait. And it truly is, because slide 16, for example, this is so helpful because it lets me see right away how we're doing compared to Region 13 in Texas, which is one of the things I think we sometimes, it helps us see whatever goals we might have for ourselves. I always like to see our goals, even the correct goals. If we have a goal of 78%, but the state average is 82%, then our goal, you got to take all that into account. So, so it looks like we're doing well in U.S. history. That's the one of the areas, perhaps the only area out of the ones listed here, the EOCs, where we actually had fewer kids not meeting grade level that compared to Region 13 and the rest of the state. And I know we're not really digging into the why and all of that stuff, but I just point this out because it really is super helpful just to at a glance see how we're doing. And I look forward to being able to do this with different student groups and things like that. I do have a question. Which was the slide where you said, I guess it was maybe this longitudinal one. I think so. Yes, where you were saying where we kind of caught up to pre-COVID levels. Was that slide 14? Okay, yeah. So do you have, and you don't, if you didn't look this up, no worries. I was just curious. Do you know if this pattern held across different demographic groups? Okay.
That you have in the tool you have, you can
I know, I'm going to go home and do that. But
I will say, our team, the goal of our team is to provide innovative and rich data tools that every leaders across all departments can use to answer those types of questions. But we as a department may not be experts in every area of those questions, because there's so much there as you looked at.
Got it.
So our goal is to make sure the right experts have the right information and they can do what they want with it.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I really loved when you guys demoed this for me. Trustees can look at the data by trustee district as well. So that's extremely useful. And I wanted to clarify something that you said earlier about the high school changes. And I'm all for raising expectations and all of that stuff. What I worry about sometimes is, and just correct me if tell me if I understood you correctly, but I think you said that they changed the rules not even during the game, but like after the game ended and people were driving home, basically.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. And so high school, so when our high schools get their scores, we need to take that into account.
Yes.
Is there a way that we can balance that? Like, I don't want our I don't want our principals to see these huge drops because of a change in the way something was calculated that they had no control over. How do we accommodate for that, like in our communications? You don't have to answer that right now, but I really think that's important because we have worked so hard to fill all these positions, and I don't want anyone to feel like they didn't do their job because of something T8. I'm not saying that we can't ever do better, and we certainly can, and that's why we're all here focusing on student outcomes. But I want to focus on actual deficiencies in teaching and learning, and not deficiencies in our state accountability system. We shouldn't have to pay for that, and our staff shouldn't have to pay for that. So I am very concerned about that and how that's going to impact morale. And the other thing I'm very concerned about is the difficulty of the test, because when you look at the research on how kids learn, if a test is super hard, they're going to give up sooner. And who's going to give up first? It's the kids who have been experiencing trauma. See, Dr. Ross, I learned something from you. And who does that impact? It's our economically disadvantaged students, our Black and brown students. So again, I'm all for increasing expectations. This is not about that. We've got to close these gaps, 100%. But like, we're dinging our kids on the wrong things. So it's really harder for us as a system to do our job. So I'm extremely concerned about that. I don't know how we get around it. I think one way is to be able to look at patterns over time and doing more and more comparisons to the state. And so we've got to look at that relative performance, the 2B, domain 2B, really closely. And if you don't mind, could you just talk, because that's my favorite one, right, Jacob? That's my favorite one. But can you talk a little bit about relative performance and what that actually means, and how that's like a little bit of a different metric than some of the other ones?
Yes, certainly. So relative performance, and we can go back. What's the slide where we have the three, the domains set up? Yeah. So it's part of domain 2. It's domain 2B, relative performance. If we really want to go in depth, we have to look at elementary and middle school differently than high school, and so we'll do that. But in general, they take the domain 1 score, and then they look at that domain 1 score in the context of other campuses that are serving a similar proportion of economically disadvantaged students. And what that means is, do these campuses have the same percent ECD as you? If they do, we're going to compare them to you. And if you perform better than them, then your domain 1 score goes up in 2B, and that shows up in the 2B area. If you don't perform as well as them, you perform significantly below them, your domain 2B score would be lower than what your domain 1 score would be. But this is, currently it's been based on standards set in 2017. So they have a graph and they have bands of what each percent ECB generally performs in, and they cross you on the graph, where do you fall, and that's how they determine how to scale your score in Domain 2B. They had suggested earlier on in the accountability process that they were going to update that graph, and they were going to use different points, 2019 and 2022, to set new norms, but the rules have not been finalized. So I don't know in 2023 if they're going to continue to use the scaling norms from 2017, or if they're going to update that scaling tool, and it's going to be based on some average that they determined from 2019 and 2022. And this is another thing, these rules, they haven't released the finalized rule manual yet, so the rules aren't even finalized yet. But so currently, when they do that scaling, it's based on where those demographic groups lied back in 2017.
Wait, so in the relative performance, so you're comparing your school, like Oak Hill Elementary, with other schools with the similar levels of ECO-DIS, but based on data that's 5 years old.
Based on those, campuses in 2017 with that same ECO-DIS.
And our demographics have changed
dramatically
as a district.
Yes.
It uses the current demographic information.
Current demographic,
But it's the graph that was prepared in
2017, yes.
The reason they do that is,
Oh, sorry.
the reason for that is it must be mathematically possible for every school to get an A. That's in the education code. So if they just did a relative rating of schools based on current economic status, then everybody would fall into a bell curve, basically, the ones with the high performance or high economic disadvantage and low. So they use a scale that was set 5 years ago so that everybody theoretically could improve enough to get an A.
That's helpful. Okay.
It's
But is
not-
relative performance looking at growth, or is it looking at?
It's looking at Domain 1, it's straight up performance.
Okay.
So your performance at a school with 95% economically disadvantaged, if you had an 80 on Domain 1, that could be a C for a school with, a small number of economically disadvantaged students, or it could be a high B for a school that had a high number.
And this is my last question, I promise. Do we know of any other states that use a test where you can basically do a little bit better than guessing and get approaches grade level?
I'm not familiar with other state testing instruments, so I don't know. It seems like a very low threshold to me, and our results are staying pretty flat even with that.
I appreciate that.
Drop.
Thank you. Trustees, any other comments? Yes, Trustee Hunter.
So, thank you for the presentation, and I have a question for Dr. Reach. When this information is released, will we have a page on our site?
That has the district accountability and the campus, yes, we will.
Okay, I would like, I shared something with you recently, and the superintendent. Basically, TEA has created these videos called In About a Minute that explain it. I think that's what people want to hear. It's literally in a minute, and it says, it's got little pictures, that's what helps me, and it says, your school is graded on these 3 things, this percent. And then when it gets to high school, it says, it may be these, the higher of the 2. That's a lot that's fine for us in this room, maybe for some of us in this room, but for the rest of the world, I think those In About a Minute are gonna be more helpful. To really, in a minute, you can figure out, what am I being judged? And then for people to understand, and I know that in District 1, we have schools that have had lower accountability, but people choose that school because that school's doing what their kid needs, right? Their children are learning to read, they're excelling, they're doing well, right? It's not comprehensive, but they are doing a good job. The teachers are doing a good job, the principals are doing a good job, and I just think that we want to be able to help our parents understand, because I have a concern about when ratings come out, that there will be misunderstanding and a mass exodus, and we haven't even completed the transfer policy yet. And I really want people to understand we need to have a good messaging around these scores and what they really mean and what they really score, and then what our values are, because they are not aligned. They are aligned in that we want good outcomes for all kids, but I think pretty much that's where we part ways after that. But if we can look at those videos, you guys can judge whether or not that's something that might help our families. I really think that will help people understand A through F, and even like, because, you know, we say CCMR, we throw that around. It's like, well, what does that mean? This little thing has a picture that says whether kids want to go to college or they want to go right into the workforce or they would like to sign up for military service, right? It breaks it down for them. So I would just ask that the administration consider that.
Thank you.
So, Trustee Hunter, appreciate the feedback, and President Singh, appreciate the comments around not wanting to create an environment where our school communities and our staff feel disheartened or feel like they're, you know, it's going to be difficult. And so Dr. Reach and Allie, our Chief of Communications and Engagement, have already started on developing that. With feedback from today, we'll be able to refine it, and perhaps what we'll do is provide it as a board update so you can kind of see the timeline as the collateral gets built, well before it actually gets released. But we kind of started that conversation and really appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. I wanted to just, can I make a request for y'all to consider, and I don't know if it's possible, but I know that AISD participates in NAEP, which is a nationally normed test, and it would be really interesting to compare how our campuses who participated in NAEP and the district overall, quite frankly, what those scores are compared to what the STAR scores are on that rating. I wonder, do you have any hypotheses?
So we are able to display NAEP by the district, but they don't provide us individual campus level for NAEP. So we will be able to share from the district, and likewise, as we talked earlier, because all the other urbans are also taking part in NAEP, we can look at that comparison along with the district comparison for STAR.
I know we normally do very well, relatively speaking.
Relative to other urbans.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay, well, thank you. Oh, yes.
I just really want to compliment the team on the work you do with accountability. I've worked with Ms. Hanson for years and years, and Dylan is one great welcome to the team. But the work of our accountability department with really breaking this down and getting this response quickly to the data that we have is always amazing. And, you know, Dr. Reach and Ms. Rodriguez, the meeting that you held with us, me individually to go over this was extremely helpful and valuable, and I know that our elementary and secondary teams are going to take this and run. So I have a lot of confidence in the organization to respond to this data, and I just wanted to offset my 20 questions with a little praise.
We like your 20 questions, though. They're very illuminating. Okay, so thank you to the team and to the trustees. So we will now move to public testimony for items on the consent agenda. So members of the public wishing to participate in the public testimony portion of our meeting called a dedicated AISD phone line in advance of the meeting to sign up to speak in person or to audio record their remarks. Tonight we have six very patient people who signed up to speak in person, and we have 4 who left a recorded message. So we will now move to in-person testimony. In order to provide as many opportunities for input as possible within a limited time period, each speaker will be allotted 1 minute. No substitutions or yielding of time to others is permitted. Callers who signed to speak up in person are welcome to come to the microphone when their name is called, and as you come to the microphone, there's a device that will light up as you move through your 1 minute of allotted time. When the buzzer sounds, please make a final thought in 1 sentence. Again, we ask that whether you come to give a complaint or praise, that you reference a staff member by position or by abbreviated last name, and we ask that all audience members, whether speaking or not, please show respect for others at all times. So we will, our in-person speakers for tonight, and I'm going to say them in the order that y'all are going to speak, so you can be ready. Elizabeth Wyatt, followed by Kynan. How do you pronounce that? Kynan? Oh, hi, Kynan. I know you. Okay, Kynan Murtaugh, Maria Merced, Mateo Alvarado, Brianna Hermosillo, and Karomi Contreras. So we'll start with Elizabeth Wyatt, please, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Wyatt, and my 2 children attend Cassis Elementary School here in AISD. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Texas chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America in regards to the armed guard requirement in HB 3. We appreciate the caution with which AISD has been proceeding in response to bad legislation. The position of Moms Demand Action is and always has been that teachers and administrators should not carry guns in our schools. Data shows that guns in schools do not make our schools safer, and in fact, they introduce risk. The mishandling of guns by adults and the culture of fear that armed adults may create, especially among students of color, those with special needs, and LGBTQ+ students, are risks that must always be considered. We know that more guns do not make us more safe, yet the state has forced you to choose the lesser of two evils, posting armed police in our schools rather than arming our educators. We urge the board to continue acting with the utmost prudence, and we thank you for understanding the danger in this new law. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Kynan Murtaugh.
Hello, my name is Kynan Murtaugh, and I'm the Student Equity Council sponsor at William B. Travis ECHS. I'm speaking on agenda item 15.1. Why are we acting immediately on SROs instead of the equally mandated mental health training? At Travis this year, we saw the staggering results of systemic neglect when we lost a student who was in my third period class. Students at this campus have been screaming to anyone who will listen for mental health support for literal years. This is not the first emerging bilingual student we have tragically lost, but it is the first one to make the news. I personally have lost 3 such students and was left to mourn 2 of them with a few other teachers that actually knew these human beings. We can lay the blame for that structural neglect on language barriers, but then what are we? We're a place that says this culture, English speakers, gets support, gets care, gets recognized and reckoned with death, and then other children are an unseen underclass. Is that who we want to be? Is that why we have a Department of Social Emotional Learning and Cultural Proficiency? How can we even look at ourselves when we know this is a pattern, we've seen the literal loss of life, and we still refused to act? I'm frustrated, I'm very sad, and I'm not willing to see another child die in obscurity. Oh, I shouldn't have closed that. Maria.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll have Maria Merced.
Hi, my name is Maria Mercedes, and I am a proud student at William B. Travis ECHS. Today I am speaking on agenda item 15.1 and House Bill 3. My question is, why act immediately on SROs instead of the required mental health training? At Travis this year, we have lost a student, a classmate, and a friend of many. Sorry. The day we returned to school, my first period teacher was struggling emotionally. I could have been the one to find her that day, she said. Her eyes filled with tears as she told us a story of what happened that day, and my heart breaks. Here's why I believe the school district has been so fixated on stopping the possibility of one student harming another that they have failed to help students who are thinking of harming themselves. Unfortunately, it is now too late for that student our school has lost and many others. However, we can still improve and be better. AISD might have failed plenty of both students and staff by now, but it is never too late to make a difference. A change which our school's Student Equity Council has been trying to improve mental health services for plenty of years now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Mateo Alvarado.
My name is Mateo Alvarado, and I am a student at William B. Travis High School. I am speaking on agenda item 15.1. My question is, why act immediately on SO instead of legally mandated mental health training? At Travis this year, not only did we deal with one of our fellow classmates passing away on campus, but only a week later, we had protesters come to our school and tell people that are part of the LGBTQ community that they should kill themselves. They were teachers and students crying because neither staff nor students knew how to handle their emotions. So if they cannot know how to handle a situation then, how do I know the trust if there's another situation? How will they handle it then? How many of us have to die before you hear us? And how many teachers leave and have to quit before you hear them? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can we help the in-person speakers know how to adjust the mic?
Yes.
Especially if they're soft-spoken.
Sure. If, Ms. McGraw, if you don't mind, thank you. Next, we have Brianna Hermosillo.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brianna Hermosillo, and I'm speaking in reference to the agenda item 15.1. I'm a mental health professional and most importantly a parent to a student attending Travis High. I'm here today to address a pressing concern that affects the hearts, minds, spirits, and future of our humanity, the mental health of our youth. We have seen effects of the excessive police force within society in recent years, and all this has contributed to is the increase of normalization of violence, distrust of our authority, and the deaths of marginalized people, like those who have mental health conditions, people of color, queer folk, and especially our youth. It has contributed to the increase in collective trauma on our communities, sending waves of desperation, loss of hope, and many struggling with suicidal ideation. Rest in love to the young woman who took her life at Travis High recently. To address these negative effects, it is imperative for mental health professionals and education agencies to work collaboratively to implement effective crisis training and community programs and reforms that promote guidance, trust, and support of individual rights, especially our youth. Our children are not only students, but individuals navigating the complexities of a collapsing society. This is our youth, and we should not treat them like future prisoners. Thank you. O Mateo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Karomi Contreras.
My name is Karomi Contreras, and I'm a student at William B. Travis Early College High School. I'm speaking today on agenda item 15.1, which attempts to respond to House Bill 3. My question is, why are we adding SROs instead of mental health resources? Sadly, this year at Travis, we had a student pass away, a girl who was in the same grade as me, who I shared classes with, and who I often said hi to in the hallways. Through her passing, we can see how little importance the system gives to those children who do not master the English language. We can see the neglect that comes when you can't communicate properly, and how there's minimum support this district offers to those who can't speak the language. It's sad to see someone your age live life so quickly, someone with a life ahead of them, with plans and dreams. We had meetings with as many people as we could since my freshman year. Now I'm a junior, and at no time has anyone acted on our mental health request. We have talked about how mental health support is essential for development, as well as for the growth of ourselves as teens. But in our school, they care more about the way we dress, making sure we sit still, and getting us out of the building as fast as they can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I truly do appreciate, especially hearing from students and your lived experience, so thank you. We will now play the recorded messages for public testimony, so please listen carefully.
Hello, good morning. My name is Amanda Mansouri. I'm the mom of a Patton Elementary School first grader. I'm calling to testify regarding the House Bill 3 mandated security officers. My message is the following. I would like to express support for the hiring of the House Bill 3 mandated security officers in our public schools. I have a son who is an elementary school student at a large elementary school with over 800 students. I believe that the number of students at the school, the size of the school, the proximity to other police resources, and the location, whether it's in a dangerous area or not, should all determine how many security officers each elementary school receives. I believe that a large elementary school such as Patton must receive more than one HB3 mandated security officer, and perhaps a school located in a dangerous area like Johnson Elementary receive more than one HB3 mandated security officer. I would like to also express support for other security mitigation measures, such as clear bags being required by all students in all schools, and potentially metal detectors to detect.
Hi, trustees. My name is Leah Kelly. I'm calling in regards to agenda item 15.1. I urge you to reconsider over-investing in police presence in favor of providing more mental health support. Downstream thinking won't solve upstream problems. The complexities in the post-pandemic mental health crisis cannot be supported by one entity. Parents and community do not expect the district to solve the mental health challenges. However, there is an expectation to make smart, rational, and efficient decisions based on evidence-based best practices. Public education is charged with educating students to be life, college, career ready, and in doing so, students have to have access to tools, services, supports, and resources to be successful. Partnerships between public schools and organizations that provide mental health services have proven to be successful and have saved the lives of students. Austin ISD has a solid history of a successful school-based mental health partnership with outside partners. The current partnership with TCHAT is a great resource, but currently has 30 to 60-day delays in serving children. We need more than navigators. The combined approach of in-person, TCHAT, and adding telehealth would be a best practice to enable equity of access across all campuses today. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Interim Superintendent Segura. My name is Megan Vasquez, and I'm a PE teacher at Becker Elementary, Austin ISD and Region 13's Elementary Teacher of the Year, and an organizing member of Education Austin. I'm calling to speak on Agenda Item 15.1, the determination of the appropriate number of police officers for each campus. I strongly believe that schools should be safe and nurturing environments for all our students and staff. Introducing more guns onto campus, even in the name of security, is a step in the wrong direction. HB 3 also has a section on mental health and a requirement that all employees who interact with students need to receive special mental health and first aid training. When will we be addressing that section? I'm not sure if there's a state timeline that districts are following regarding this bill, but I think we as a district need to speed up our internal timeline regarding access to mental health training for all of our staff. We need to focus and invest on comprehensive strategies that address the root cause. I urge the district and school board to also consider alternative approaches to ensuring the safety of our schools, like investing in more mental health services, implementing effective crisis response protocols, and enhancing preventative measures. Becker is in Travis High School vertical team, so to the Travis High School community and the Student Equity Council, as well as the Anderson High School community, I want you to know we see you, we hear you, and you are not alone.
Courtney Peterson, I'm a parent. Good evening, members of the AISD board. My name is Courtney Peterson. I'm a mother to a first grader at Kiker Elementary and a therapist who specializes in treating trauma and PTSD. Let me start by saying that I am strongly opposed to HB 3. There is no evidence that having an armed presence makes the school safer and can actually create an environment of fear which can harm the learning process. Because of this, I have been closely following AISD and how they would meet the requirements of this bill. I want to thank members of the AISD board for committing to not arm teachers and staff. I want to encourage members to keep rejecting the use of the Guardian or Marshal programs and instead to commit to hiring more SROs. Please keep requiring that these officers receive specialized training for mental health emergencies, crisis intervention, de-escalation techniques, cultural proficiency, as well as requiring them to be trauma-informed. Although I am opposed to HB 3, I think hiring more SROs and giving them the right training is the best option to meet this bill's requirement. Thank you so much.
All right, so this concludes public testimony. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? Trustee Lugo.
Thank you, and thank you to the students who provided their personal testimony, as well as the guardians and teachers and staff. Part of my question is the work that Austin ISD has been doing around mental health goes years back, and something that I think maybe you and I had talked about not that long ago, Superintendent Segura, is that really when we look at our school district and what it provides compared to other districts, we're leading, and yet, right? And yet we need to do better, which we do, I believe, and I know that. And so I guess part of the clarification request would be in future meetings or maybe as a written report or in whatever format makes sense, providing a snapshot of, like, where did we start, where are we at, where are we going with mental health services, both for students and staff. For example, I should have known that I think I should have known that there is a mental health page on Austin ISD. And I had to ask my colleague, hey, do we have a mental health page? to which she looked it up, and now I have it on my cell phone. So, kind of giving us a snapshot over time of what the work has been and where we want to go, right, with that work. So I'll stop there, and then I have one more comment.
Trustee Lugo, I think the conversations we've had, and I've had them as well with other leaders and trustees and community members, I think there's a real need to assess where we are, acknowledge that we've done some things, but it's not quite enough, not nearly enough in some instances. And then also, if it's going to be a priority, it needs to be a priority, right? It reflected in our budget, reflected in our documents, operating procedures. And I think what we're missing right now is a comprehensive understanding of truly what we have, how it's different, what our partner agencies may have, and how they may support our families, and kind of where that gray area is and how to get that clarified. And then bring it to the board and talk about where we want to go. I know Dr. Twyla Williams, who is in the back over there, has been with us, has great ideas, and has been pushing hard. But it takes all of us, if we're going to truly invest in the way that we need to kind of re-envision what this might look like. But we're prepared to have that conversation. We're eager to have it. I think what we're probably looking at is an information session sometime in September, or September would be ideal, honestly. Because getting that feedback early is going to be helpful. At the same time, as I said in my superintendent's update, we're going to be going to our campuses, engaging and getting feedback, and it'd be good to report back at that time as well.
A quick question about the campus feedback. Is that going to be kind of like, what are the opportunities for both students, families, and staff to provide input? Because sometimes I struggle to even show up to things. So I was just wondering if there are going to be additional options for people to provide feedback.
There will be. We don't have the details all laid out. There's many vertical teams and feeder patterns in AISD. We want to make sure that we provide opportunities for engagement in person, but also recognize that due to constraints, that isn't always possible. So we're looking at multiple avenues. I just can't tell you precisely schedule-wise what that looks like, but it is something we are looking at. And I can provide that strategy, I would say, within a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Okay. And then, thank you. And then, let's see, how do I do this as a question? I'm just going to say it as a comment. So on the Austin ISD website, one of the items that's listed there is recognition of September as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And then it links to some family resources. Man, I know I'm taking up time, but I'm going to preface my tangent with, so oftentimes school boards here in Texas are asked to complete training so that the school board can be focused on governance and not management. And one of the interesting things that is kind of drilled into, depending on what training, right, you get, depending on other things, this phrase comes to mind that we've heard in trainings. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Student outcomes don't change, right? When that phrase is given to us, it's in the context of scores. And we're missing the point of how schools are the heart of a community. I loved school. I wanted to be in school. I did not want to be at home. So school was a great place for me. It was a place that I could go and feel accepted. That's not everybody's situation. School, they may not want to be at home or at school, right? So I guess that's my long way of saying this issue of mental health resources means a lot to me. I know it meant a lot to, it's meant a lot to folks throughout our administration, right, at every campus. But I think about Trustee Letitia Anderson and how she would share her personal kind of thoughts and experience with mental health and how she really championed that issue. I also think of Trustee Zapata and how one of the first communications that I saw about the mental health training requirement was Trustee Zapata saying, okay, when are we going to do this? Like, let's do this. Let's move on this. And that's just so amazing. So I don't really know if that's a question or it's probably just rambling, but I just hope that the students who took time to be here know that this is really important to us and really important to me personally.
Thank you, Trustee Lugo. Trustee Zapata.
I want to thank all the students that for showing up and to speaking out on this on behalf of your peers as well. This is a priority for the city, the county, the school district, Central Health. So everybody's making this a priority. So I personally, and you know, right now the Central Health has a whole lot of money. And so that you made me think about going to them tomorrow and say, we need some money over here at Travis, because that's what we need to do. We need to make the people spend the money where we need it. So thank you for sharing, and stay tuned. Thank you.
Trustee Hunter.
I have a request for the superintendent, and again, thank the students from Travis for sharing their experience. As the district is asset mapping, there's a couple of things I would like us to check for, if you would. One is care after someone has taken their life, because we don't have, I don't believe that we have those supports in place. I mean, I think like CIS and ACC and other people came along with Austin ISD and supported that, but a critical response should be ours. Like, we should own that. I don't know how, like partner-wise or whatever, I don't know how the district would choose to do that, but I would, as we look in the asset mapping, if I've missed that, then I'd like to see that kind of drawn out, and if it doesn't exist, then how we move forward on that. Also, how to ask this? The afterwards for students and teachers, but also the afterwards for families. And then we never really think about something until it happens. So I see my kids every day. I talk to my kids every day. I take for granted that they're fine. But for the first time, I'm like, are you really okay? You're going to a new high school. And I don't really have that language. I don't have that skill. And so if that's an asset that we have, where parents can be like, hey, I'm not sure my kid is okay, what should I do? Right? For so many people, honestly, in the Black and brown community, we don't go to church, right? But God invented mental health helpers, in my opinion. And so that's available, but that's almost a taboo subject in our community sometimes. And so I hear a lot of people saying, oh, if we had this, yes, but people have to use it if we have it. So then we have to make it okay to use, and we have to make it, you go to church and then you go right to the therapist, and you can tell the priest what the therapist said, right? Or whatever. But that's not generally what happens. I'm not speaking for all communities, but traditionally my time that I spent with Black and brown folks, you need to pray about that. You'll be just fine. And so I want us to do our asset mapping, but I also want, as best as we can, to help people understand that if there's a chemical imbalance, there's a chemical imbalance. If there's something that you need, if there's something, yes, and, right? It doesn't have to be either or. And I don't know that, even with my own family members, sometimes I have to explain, yes, my kid is seeing somebody, and that's okay. And so I don't know how we do that. You know, our mandate is to educate kids, but we can't educate them if they're hungry. We can't educate them if they have no place to sleep. We can't educate them if they are in turmoil, if they are in trauma. So though these things are tangential, Nolita just ripped my heart out, because outcomes for students won't change until we do what we're supposed to do. And that's an outcome right now that I'm more concerned about than any number or letter grade. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Hunter. Trustee Boswell.
I want to start by adding my thanks to everyone who's spoken, especially to all of our students who took time to come tonight and to the adults who helped them get here. And we've talked about school being a place where you learn, and that's true of every school, but school's a place where you also learn about yourself and learn to be part of a community of adults and other students. And I'm so proud to see you here caring about each other and speaking out to make a difference. So I'm so proud that that is what we're growing in Austin ISD too, and that you're really showing us that example tonight. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate speaking up. I would love to hear from everyone who's been at Travis and at Anderson about how we can respond in better ways. We get better by learning. We can't undo the early response, gaps that I've been hearing about, but we can get better from here forward, and we can make it better next time. And I think that's a policy practice. We talk a lot about systems. We happen to have someone in our superintendent role who is very good at systems, and information helps us make our systems better. So we can be emailed at trustees@austinisd.org. Staff can be emailed. You have wisdom to share with us, and I hope you will continue to do that. And then my final question, a lot of our speakers talked about, we have a vote on one HB3 issue tonight, which is the armed people at our campuses. HB3 is a very large law that contains many, many things. And one of them is that mental health training, not just for teachers, but for everyone in our district who engages regularly with students, recognizes the power of our bus drivers, our front office staff, our cafeteria workers, their relationships with our students, everyone. And so some people called for a speeding up the timeline locally. I think we have 3 years, Dr. Reach, to get everyone, 5 years to get everyone in the district trained, which is a really long time and a whole lot of kids. So do we have a plan yet? Have we talked about that yet? What kind of capacity and plan do we have?
Well, I can tell you that we know that we can go faster than 5 years, much faster. I think the challenge we have is just making sure that each of our kind of groupings of categories, staff-wise, have the available time within their contract and kind of sequencing that out. I'd like to say that we can get it done within 1 year, but again, with a lot of the things that we're working through right now, I don't want to commit and say that we can if I don't know for certain that we can. So what I can commit to is actually working with the team and developing that detailed schedule as we work through kind of the other trainings that are going to be required as part of special education and so on and so forth. So we can come back and provide a detailed, I wouldn't say detailed, I would say maybe a milestone timeline for each of our position categories over a period of time and see what that feels like for the board and if it's appropriate given the constraints that we have.
Great. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
Trustees, any other questions? Okay. So as a reminder to the public, please feel free to share any general comments or questions on non-voting items with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. Our next item is part of our commitment to discuss student achievement, and we have a presentation on the 22-23 scorecard Goal 7, disparity of African American disciplinary actions, and Goal 8, disparity of special education disciplinary actions. So, Mr. Segura.
Thank you, President Singh. I'd like to welcome Mr. Oscar Adams, Associate Director. Sorry, let me say that again?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to now welcome Mr. Oscar Adams, Associate Director of Student Support Services to share tonight's scorecard presentation. Go ahead, Oscar.
Good evening, President Singh, Superintendent Segura, trustees. This evening I will provide the final 22-23 scorecard goal for 7 and 8 report, which monitors our disparities of disciplinary actions for African American students and students who receive special education services. The presentation includes disaggregated data for the 2 student groups in the scorecard, and I will discuss continued efforts to improve outcomes in the scorecard measure. Scorecard Goals 7 and 8 monitors the overrepresentation of disciplinary actions for African American students and students who receive special education services. Specifically, Goal 7 measures the disparity of disciplinary actions for African American students, and Goal 8 measures the disparity of disciplinary actions for students receiving special education services. It is important to ensure that all disciplinary actions are proportionate to the student group's enrollment. This means if African American students make up 10% of our enrollment, they should be represented at 10% or equally for their disciplinary action rate. The scorecard defines a disciplinary action as a discretionary offense, as defined by Chapter 37 in the Education Code, that results in an in-school suspension, home suspension, discretionary removal. Mandatory offenses such as assaults, drugs, Title V offenses are not included in this measure. This is simply what we can control and we have the discretion to address. The table in this slide demonstrates the 5-year trend data and the final end-of-the-year data for school year 22-23. Starting on the left, in school year 18-19, the African American enrollment was 7.6%. There were 13,432 total disciplinary actions, and 2,527 were attributed to African American students, making the African American disciplinary action rate 18.80%. The enrollment for students receiving special education services was 14%, and 3,951 disciplinary actions were attributed to this student group, resulting in a disciplinary action rate of 29.40%. For school year 22-23, African American students represented 6.17% of enrollment, while their disciplinary action rate was 17.20%, exceeding the target of 13% for Goal 7. For scorecard Goal 8, the enrollment for students receiving special education services was 15.68%, and the disciplinary action rate was 29.50%. The scorecard target was 27%, so the district exceeded the target for Goal 8. I would like to draw to your attention some of the noteworthy trends that have been observed in the data. The data indicates a decrease in the total number of disciplinary actions as compared to the previous academic year. Specifically, there were 125 fewer disciplinary actions taken against African American students and 195 fewer disciplinary actions taken against students who receive special education services. Although we did not meet the special education target, there was significant improvement considering that the enrollment of special education students increased by 2.28 percentage points from the previous year, and we still had a reduction of 0.02% in comparison. So we serviced more students, but we still had a reduction in the overall disciplinary actions. While we could not meet the target for these student groups, there were still positive outcomes. Slide 3 provides a deeper understanding of the students included in Goal 7. The African American enrollment was 4,519 students, which was 6.17% of the total student population. 455 African American students received at least one disciplinary action. This informs us that 10% of African American students received one disciplinary action and 90% of African American students did not receive a disciplinary action. The 455 African American students received a total of 951 disciplinary actions. The table on the right provides a breakdown of the number of disciplinary actions students received. Just a reminder, a disciplinary action is a discretionary offense that results in in-school suspension, home suspension, or discretionary removal. The table shows that 53.19% of African American students who received a disciplinary action only received one disciplinary action. This lets us know that once students receive intervention from the school and support, that over half of the students don't receive a second disciplinary action. The remaining breakdown of students who received multiple disciplinary actions is found in the table. The graph on the left shows the top 7 offenses for the 951 disciplinary actions. The data shows that fights, physical aggression, insubordination, and disruption were the top 4. The graph on the right shows the disciplinary action breakdown by home suspension, in-school suspension, and discretionary removals. One data point that has significantly decreased over time is the discretionary removals to the DAP. As you can see, there were only 11 African American students assigned to the District Alternative Education Program for a discretionary offense. Slide 5 shows the disciplinary action data for students receiving special education services. Out of the total special education population, 11,481 individuals received special education services, making the special education enrollment 15.68% of the total student population. So again, a 2.28% increase from the previous year. 793 students who received special education services had at least one disciplinary action. The data informs us that only 7% of students who received special education services had one disciplinary action, and on the other hand, a vast majority of 93% of students who received special education services did not have any disciplinary actions. There were a total of 1,630 disciplinary actions, and the table on the right shows a breakdown of the number of actions for the 793 unique student count. 57% of students who received one disciplinary action. So again, we know that campuses are doing a great job of supporting students after they receive the first disciplinary action. As you review the remaining data in the table, one thing to note is that 163 African American students that were in the previous scorecard measure also received special education services, and their data is included in this measure. On slide 6, the graph on the left shows the top 7 offenses. Fights, physical aggression, cutting class, and insubordination were the top 4 offenses. The graph on the right shows the disciplinary action breakdown for home suspension, in-school suspension, partial suspensions, and discretionary removals. Again, we had a significant reduction in discretionary placements to the District Alternative Education Program. Only 10 students who received special education services were assigned to the DAP last year, so much improved from previous years. So although we did not reach the target for both scorecard measures, there were positive changes in the data that I want to bring to your attention. There was a 9% overall reduction in the total number of disciplinary actions compared to the previous school year. An 8% reduction in African American disciplinary actions, 9% reduction in special education disciplinary actions. We had 46 schools that had no disproportionality. 65% of secondary schools reduced their African American disproportionality rate from the previous year, and 59% of secondary schools reduced their special education disproportionality from the previous year. This picture on the right is an example of how we've been able to accomplish this reduction. Last November, I received a call from one of our middle schools, and the principal has just shared there was a large fight that occurred on campus involving 13 students. And she shared because of school safety, she thought the best route of action was to assign these students to the DAP. And after visiting with the principal, I said, can we hold a restorative circle with these students and their parents? So we invited over 60 parents and all of the students that were involved in the conflict up, and we had our restorative practice coordinator, the principal led the circle, our school SRO, Dr. Wilson was there, myself, and it was just amazing to hear from all of the parents. We learned that some of the parents had just recently moved to the community. We had a parent who shared that she was battling cancer. And what we learned from all of the students and all the parents is that they wanted their children to come to a safe environment. They wanted them to get a quality education. So what the most incredible piece is after we had that restorative circle and we spent over 2 hours hearing from all of the families, we did not have another incident between the student groups again. So it's the efforts that we're making with implementing restorative practices and having growth mindset principals that are willing to do things different why we are seeing an improved outcome for our students. So the final two slides show the support and steps we are taking to continue our efforts to eliminate disparities in discipline. This slide shows a comprehensive list of resources and supports campuses receive and the interventions in place to address disparities. All secondary campuses will continue to complete a disciplinary action plan, and elementary campuses will complete a culture and climate plan to address their campus individual needs. These plans have to be done before the beginning of the school year so that they're proactively planning supports for their campus. This school year, the Campus Improvement Plan for secondary school, the CIP, includes the measure for scorecard goals 7 and 8. So this allows input from the Campus Advisory Committee, as well as assistance with allocating resources and provide increased monitoring for both student groups. Campuses will continue to receive executive coaching from their executive director. The MTSS team will continue to support campuses with school-wide culturally responsive PBIS strategies. And the special education department is working diligently to provide training and supports to meet the needs of students who receive special education services. My team and I will meet with all secondary schools to provide coaching and work with elementary campuses that have high disproportionality rates as well. This last slide outlines targeted support specific campuses will receive based on their campus needs and last year data. The MTSS team will provide targeted support with campuses with high numbers of incidents to help improve their culturally responsive school-wide PBIS systems. Restorative practice coordinators are supporting campuses with high rates of disproportionality for African American students, and the special education department has created a plan to target support for campuses with high disproportionality for students receiving special education services. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide the end of the year scorecard update on goals 7 and 8. We have a knowledgeable team available to answer questions. So I have with me in the audience, Dr. Cherry Lee, Krista Etheridge, and from the Teaching, Learning, and Leading, Dr. Wilson and Crystal Kohoff.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Really appreciate this information. Trustees, do you have any questions, comments? Trustee Hunter.
Thank you for the presentation, and the department is to be commended for the outcomes for the reduction in DAEP placements. I am concerned that the numbers are better, but the lived experience of our families isn't any better. And so I have an occasion to be in the community and on campuses quite often, and what I hear from students, I'm like, why are you in the hallway, right? They're not an ISS, they're not an ALC, but why are you in the hallway? The teacher told me to come outside because she just don't want me in her classroom right now. That's shadow discipline. That's not on any paper anywhere. That kid is not in a class being taught. When I'm speaking with students, particularly students of color, I cannot hear one more time, they don't want me. That doesn't exist. That is our job. In any place that is the feeling of a child, then we have failed a child again. I don't know how we talk about cultural competency and we have, this training, but the training is overburdened teacher. When you have time, take more. And there are teachers out there that do it, they eat it up, they cannot wait to go to more training. But when you come to Austin ISD, the expectation is you will teach who is in front of you, no matter what school you are at, no matter what that child looks like, no matter whether or not they're living with disabilities, you will teach the child to the best of your abilities, 110%. And I know that that is our expectation. I don't know that everybody in a classroom understands that that is definitely my expectation. And I don't want to have families calling me saying, what do I have to do to get my child out of this teacher's class? What's the problem? Talk to the principal. I always send them back to the campus, right? That's not my bailiwick. But if people are reaching out and reaching up, the numbers are not reflecting their experience. The numbers are great, good. We're not at least getting them off the campus or sending them home. But while they're in the building, they still have to be part of that community. Dr. Wilson or Oscar, please respond. And if there's information I don't have or information I need or plans that are in works that I'm not aware of, I would love to hear that.
I'll respond first, and then I also want to invite Crystal to come up as well, because we look at this all the time and discuss this. So we know data tells a story, and oftentimes it only tells one side of the story, right? So that's where we have to look at other data points. We have to look at our survey data. We have to open spaces for students to advocate their needs and provide student voice, because that's how we get a true picture of what's going on at the campus, because we hear that often as well, you know, that data will show one thing, but that lived experience may be different. Dr. Wilson?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of creative things on campuses. Oscar mentioned Martin Middle School. We had another middle school last school year where we noticed, and I was actually the one that pointed it out, about the students that I was seeing in the hallway and how it only reflected one demographic, that were constant roamers in the hallway. And we have very specific and strategic conversations as executive directors with principals and with admin teams when we see this happen. For that particular middle school, we actually invited that student group after school with their parents, and we had very candid conversations with the community on their lived experiences in the school. The parents were able to speak about their experiences as parents, maneuvering and navigating through the system, and then also students were able to speak about their experiences and how places where they feel comfortable, which a lot of the times weren't the instructional core academic classroom places. We see them feeling more comfortable in electives and classes where they choose the teacher and choose the course. So with those candid conversations, we bring in Ms. Crystal Kohlhoff's team. We called it SOS support last year. I said SOS, but it was really SEWSS, social emotional wellness. Yes. We're like, we need the SOS team. And so the MTSS team, they've been very critical and instrumental in that process, and it's very campus specific. So they come in and they do these full out evaluations and observations. I actually had it maybe at 3 middle schools and maybe 2 of my high schools last year, which were primarily in District 1. And what they do is they start off at the arrival, at the bus station or bus ramps, and then they observe transition systems, periods, they observe cafeteria, classroom. They give us very detailed anecdotal notes. Like, they sit down with us after we finish. We have a pre-meeting with the executive director, the assistant superintendent, counseling and crisis support members, MTSS members, as well as SEL participants, the principal, and then other campus designees that the principal invites to the meeting. We have the pre-meeting for the focus areas. Then we actually have the full-out observation that's scheduled. We have the post-meeting where they come in with very specific anecdotal data. For one particular campus, it was like, hey, we were at the bus ramps, or we were at the entrance door, the doors where the kids enter, and we noticed that 152 students walked in and only had 7 adults, or 7 interactions, 7 students interacted with an adult, and they passed all these adults going in the hallways to the classroom. So it's down to the science and to the minute. And then we talk about next level support, and we bring in and operationalize so many departments and resources, and we plan PD sessions, and there are just different things. For some, it's a simple task as just coaching the principal around, you have to have all the staff to be out during passing period in the hallways, or make sure that there's a positive touch greeting or interaction when they cross the threshold to come into the classroom. For Travis in particular, what I'm the most proud of is we had Life Anew that came, and we partnered with them last school year. And with Life Anew, we were able to be very specific about invite-only restorative circles. So it wasn't just whole group, anybody could come. We looked at our data and we noticed that there was a certain student group and a certain demographic and a certain gender where that encompassed a lot of maybe, let's say, physical aggression or fights or whatever. And so we particularly invite certain people in for certain things, and students were excited to be a part of that. But I do want to say that we're very data specific and detail oriented when it comes down to the science of the strategies and what's provided.
Is it all?
And one thing I do want to kind of say in terms of MTSS, I think sometimes people don't realize that there's kind of two sides to that triangle. We have the academic side and we have interventions and we're looking at the academic data, but we also have this strong side of cultural responsive PBIS that really lays the framework and the foundation for instruction to occur. That's really the plate. Sometimes I think staff feel overwhelmed and we're adding more to the plate, but if we don't have that piece, then we just have a cracked plate and things and students start to fall through. And so we really need to look at our systems in terms of, do we have the skill set and the adult behaviors in place to make a safe and predictable learning environment for students, or learning will not occur. So that has to be the first piece that we have. And that really kind of starts at digging into the framework of the campus. And when we're talking about systems change, systems take years to change because we're going down to beliefs. When we look at a system is built based on my beliefs, and then that builds the system and the structures, and then that's what lends itself to the behaviors we see in the culture of a school. So we're going down into the bottom basement of our thoughts of what we bring to a school. And I also want to kind of emphasize that for us, culture is not race. We have schools built for a culture. We have to start analyzing, is our culture built around the actual culture of our school, or the culture that we've brought and we envision based on our beliefs and our biases that we have? So we're really kind of trying to examine that. And I think what's great about, we have a team of 5 integrated systems facilitators, and their job is to integrate all the amazing supports we have in the district to bring the right supports and the right PD to that campus based on the data that we see. But it's really driven around changing adult behavior to support students so that they do feel welcome, and I'm regulated and I feel safe and things are predictable, so now I can focus on the learning and I don't have to worry about those other things. But it really takes a whole team, and I really love that we have brought Office of School Leadership, Student Support Services, MTSS all together, and we work to make sure that we're aligning all of those systems.
First of all, yes to all of that. Thank you. A lot of that I did not know. I can't imagine how many people on this dais also didn't know, and I never knew that MTSS as a teacher had another side. I just know the side where I'm supposed to do. And so I didn't know there was another side. I'm glad that that's happening. I'm glad that we're digging down there. I guess my final question about all of this is this incumbent upon an executive director to notice, or for a principal to say help, or is it like, how can all of those things happen?
All.
Okay, great.
All of those. We even go down to the level of teachers saying, my systems aren't meeting the needs of students. Can someone come observe and give me feedback and help me grow? So it can be teachers, it can be principals, it can be executive directors, it can be Oscar with his data. It can be any of those things that trigger wanting to grow and improve their systems.
Okay, I just gonna be real honest with you. I've lived here my whole life. Yeah. You're right, we have brought some cultures to our schools. Mm-hmm. And again, that's that sort of tension between what we as a board have set and what that building has set. Now, everybody has their own individual culture in your school. We want you to have that. But we want you to have that based on inclusivity and diversity and all the things that we as AISD, the community, has said, this is what we want in our schools. And I think sometimes, I know that is the disconnect. I'm glad you are out there doing that work. I will say it again and again and 100 times over and over until we bring families to the table and give them the tools that they need. They will not feel empowered. They will always feel disenfranchised. And those are the phone calls that I'm going to keep getting. And I will tell you that when I'm getting these phone calls, they are a lot from Black and brown families. Yes. But I'm telling you, middle-class white people are calling me too. And they're saying, I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't know why this is the way it is. And I don't always have a good answer for them other than we are working on it. We are, but people vote with their feet. And so I always feel this sense of urgency. Again, appreciate the numbers are down. Appreciate the fact that you shadow discipline. So how do that's a culture that we have to get rid of. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Hunter. Anyone else? Trustee Kaufman?
Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that as our board, works to narrow or shorten our meetings and narrow our focus more tightly on student outcomes, that we recognize that this topic right now is very much in line with student outcomes, regardless of what other people may define that as, because this is really directed, it is directly related to the achievement academically that our students have. It is also, more importantly, perhaps directly related to their life outcomes. And the experience they have with discipline in school is going to have a marked effect on what their outcomes are in life. So I'm very happy that we're getting this update. I'm very pleased that we're focusing on this as a board, because this is a priority for our students and our families. I want to say hi to Crystal Kohoff. Shout out, yes, MTSS provides a lot of services and support, and you and your colleagues were invaluable support when I was principal of Pettis.
I loved being your coach. You were amazing.
Yeah. But what they brought in were skills and strategies and practices, and I think that's the danger sometimes with these policies is like, you must reduce referrals, right? But then people are like, okay, great, I can't refer a kid, or I can't suspend a kid, but what else do I do? So then that has a negative impact on the students who now don't get any additional support, has a negative impact on the teacher because they're feeling unsupported and unable to do anything. And then it has a negative impact on the data because it results in the shadow discipline. We're like, well, we're going to reduce our referrals because we're not going to call it a referral, right? Instead of actually improving results. So anyhow, you and your team are amazing. I'm glad to see you part of the team today still. So yes to the support and training for teachers, and yes to the concern about potential shadow discipline and making sure that this data is actually reflecting the lived experience in our schools and not just the numbers that are reported. So some specific questions. So I liked the way you broke the data down, where you looked at the number of unique referrals versus the number of repeat referrals, and not just referrals, but we're talking about discipline actions, right? So we're not even talking about referrals. So the repeat versus the kind of one-timers. And the data you shared there was that like 10% of students who are identified as African American and 6.9% of students identified as receiving special education services receive one or more disciplinary actions. What is the comparable number for all students? Like when you look at all students across our district, what % of students receive one or more disciplinary actions in the course of last year?
So you mean, when you say all students, mean by?
Well, and just, we're looking at proportionality, right? So the other data that was in the report has the proportionality.
Yes.
Percentage of students who are African American and percentage of actions that were African American. But I don't know what the comparable number is.
Sure.
Do you have that?
I don't have that, but I can get that to you. I will tell you, for our white students, I know it's about 3% of their student population. So again, it is disproportionate for our African American students. They're 3 times likely as high to receive a disciplinary action. But I can get that data for you.
Okay, that's very helpful. And that data was very helpful because it provides a more accurate number. Like 10% of all students receiving referral is much more promising than 18%, of all actions being for African American students. But it's still, it would help to have that comparison number.
So
yeah, please.
Trustee Kaufman, would it be the 5529 over the 73225?
Yes.
So that's 7.5%.
No, he's referring to 10% of African American students receive disciplinary referral. I think he was asking for all students. What percentage of all?
What's the 5520? That was the number.
Total discipline actions.
Yes, but it would be the number of unique students. So
okay,
how many,
unique, not total.
Right.
Got it.
Great.
I can get that. We get that.
And then, just philosophically, I don't need an answer right now, but I would like to better understand some of the underpinnings of our policies and our procedures for discipline. I'm curious, what evidence do we have that these disciplinary actions at all result in improved experience for the student involved or in improved learning environment for the other students? So, because sometimes it's the only thing we know to do, right? I'm as a parent, I'm going to take your phone away for 2 weeks. I'm taking your phone away for the rest of your life, right? But it doesn't, it's all I know what to do at that moment. But it doesn't help, right? So I'm just curious whether we have evidence that the disciplinary actions that we're talking about actually have a positive effect.
Yeah, I think that's where we use our panorama survey data, where we look at, questions. So when we identified campuses for restorative practices, we not only looked at their data, but we also looked at their survey results, specifically on 2 questions, school belonging, school culture. We looked at the responses for teachers, students, and parents, because that gave us a broader context of, how students felt about their school. Did they feel safe? Did teachers feel like they had the tools that they needed to manage their classroom? So I think we have to just bring in additional data points to get that full picture.
Okay.
And also, when we review the data, we look at how many times a single student is represented multiple times in the data. And I think when we reviewed that, we noticed that when a student is issued, and just looking at the variation of consequences, we have, I guess, a positive trend or value when we look at that they're not likely to repeat or do that same disciplinary infraction again once that first time happens.
Yeah. I think that's what Superintendent Secure was referencing. For African American students, 57% of the students only receive one incident, and then, 53 for African American, 57 for students receiving special education services. So once they have that interaction with our administrators, and they're using restorative practices, they're, partnering with the mentor, holding that child study team meeting, we're not seeing students continue to, get additional incidents.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's helpful. But I know several years ago when the board established a policy where we would not have discretionary removals for kids in pre-K through second grade, I think it was based on the idea that we know that it, A, doesn't work, and B, we know that it's actually harmful for the kids in the long run. And it doesn't create a better learning environment for every other student when they see kids being evicted right from the room. And so I'm just wondering, are we reaching a point at any time when we start to have that recognition that perhaps that's the case for 3rd through 12th grade, that assigning a kid to in-school suspension or sending them to DAEP may not be an effective response to a kid cutting class, right? Oh, you're going to cut class? Because there were 72 African-American students and 172 African-American actions and 193 special education actions that were for cutting class. And it's just one of those things where it's like, well, okay, you're skipping class. The consequence is you're not going to get to go to class, right? And so it's just one of those things where are we really examining, like, not only is this the right thing to do, or is it justice? Is it actually working, right? And because people will be less likely to use something when they know it. I mean, I think people use it because they think it works. But do we know that it works? Because if it doesn't work, then we should be making it loud and clear to people, this doesn't work, let's try something else. So I'm just really curious if we have evidence, and if we're looking, I guess, at evidence to say, like, do these things work, and for whom does it work? Because for some kids, 20 days for vaping, I'm not going to touch an e-cig, right? But for other kids, I bet you we've had several referrals already for e-cigs, even though we have a 20-day removal now for that. Some kids, the threat doesn't work. So is there thoughts on that already?
I think we do look at that a little bit in our child study team meetings. If we have a whole committee that looks and asks those questions about students, because I think what you're really getting at is it a skills deficit or is it a proficiency deficit? Like, I have the skill, I'm just not proficient in using in all these social scenarios, so how do I get coaching and support and intervention in that way? Or is it a pure skills deficit, and now I need to learn that skill to even be using it across settings? And so those conversations can happen when you have a well-established child study team meeting to drill down into that, because it really needs to happen at that individual student level. And for some students, it just takes that one time of, I wrote a note and passed it, and I'm not going to be a chronic note writer for the rest of my life. I just need someone to tell me to not do that. That's what we can do, but we have to have those conversations. And I think the other key piece is sometimes what's the beauty with the child study team system that we developed over a decade ago was we focused on the whole child. We don't talk about academics in one team and behavior and PBIS on another team. It happens all together because it's really hard to tease out, is this a chicken or an egg? Are they having behaviors because of these academic gaps? So it's easier for me to throw a chair and get out of math than do algebra because I don't know how to do algebra. Or am I struggling in algebra because I missed all of 8th grade math? And so we have to have everyone at the table to have those conversations. And then I think the other key piece is really having a growth mindset on campuses so that people are willing to ask for help. If we have it to where this is tied to your evaluation, teachers aren't willing to say, I don't have a skill. So that's why it's imperative for us to allow teachers to come to us. We're not a part of the evaluation system, and we can meet with you and help you grow grow because we should all continue to grow. I've done PBIS for 20 years, and I'm ashamed to say what PBIS looked like 20 years ago. It wasn't great. It was very compliance-based. It wasn't responsive to cultures in the school, and it was based essentially on a white patriarchal society of what school looks like. And now we've had to grow to learn what it looks like now. And I think we need to really have that set where it's not about we're coming into a school, we're partners with you to get into that data and ask those really important questions to get down to what a student actually needs, and that's where that individualization comes in.
Thank you. That's great, thank you. I'm having flashbacks to 15 years ago in the PEDIS conference room.
We had these same conversations
Yes,
in your
okay.
office.
Okay, so a couple more. If we had a DRE, would we be able to analyze the possible correlation between like the student referrals and these discipline actions and teacher characteristics? So we could see like are we a majority coming from teachers with limited experience or who of particular race or gender or certification level or whether they participated in certain professional learning or not?
I think it's just way too complex to get down to that level. I mean, you can even have like a scenario of, because we bring our own culture and beliefs into a classroom and things can be triggers for me. So I might be an amazing teacher that has 25 years of experience. I've gone to all the PD, but this reminds me of something traumatic and I don't know how to deal with these interactions. I don't know what happens to my brain. So we also need to look at teachers need to be able to regulate themselves as well, because if I'm not regulated, I can't regulate you. And if both of us aren't regulated, there's no teaching and learning occurring. So I think it would be really, really complex. And honestly, I think if anyone could figure that out, that's like, we could write a book and we would solve it. It's really, really complex, I think. So I don't think we'd be able to drill down to that.
Okay, thank you. And then last, I just want to, I'm always skeptical of the data because there's always a story, right? There's shadow discipline, there's mistakes in the data, there's underreporting, there's also, but I do want to recognize and look at the particular schools and their data on here. So I do want to shout out to the schools that I observed on the data that you shared with us that showed a much smaller gap or no gap at all for the categories that we're talking about of student groups. So for the African American discipline action disparities, I saw that high schools included District 7's Bowie High School as one with little to no disparity, McCallum High School and Novato High School, Early College High School, and then I saw middle schools, Bedichek, Burnett, Martin, Mendez, and Small also appeared to be on a low on that list. And then for special education, I saw high schools, or early college high schools, Aikens and LBJ, and then Mendez and Webb for middle schools. So I just want to shout out to the campuses where we see the data looking good. And then for elementary, thankfully there are very few documented disciplinary actions, but I did note that where there are more than 10 actions for any given campus, there is a huge disproportionality for both African American and special education, both. So for the handful of campuses where there are more than 11 actions being taken place, they are heavily disproportionately for. So I think, again, hopefully we can really see the support for those elementary campuses in addition to the secondary campuses that Dr. Wilson's talking about. So that is all, but thank you all for everything and for the report. Oh, I did have one more thing, for just my standard refrain on these monitoring reports. I know that we will look at what we're asking for what we presented on these, but I am very, for this report, I would love to hear, again, similarly, where here's the data, but then here's the implementation of the plan. So in this case, we talked about the meetings, the one-on-one meetings with the principals. Well, what percentage of those meetings happened? Did 100% of those meetings happen, or were some schools left out from having those meetings? You talked about the discipline action plans and the culture and climate plans that we were taking. Well, what percentage of those plans, what were the criteria for those plans? What percentage of the campuses met the district's criteria for having effective plans? And then is there a process for monitoring those plans? And what percentage of campuses are actually implementing the plan that they submitted on paper? Because when I submitted a culture and climate plan, ain't nobody looked at it, and nobody asked me for data to support that we actually did what we said we're going to do. So is that happening? And I would love to see that reported to the board to know that what we say we're doing, we're doing. And then attendance, you talked about in the steps, the professional development that teachers and principals are attending. But what's the percentage participation in those professional development? And then what's the effectiveness of those professional development sessions? Are the teachers finding them valuable? Because you know that teachers are going to be the harshest judges of whether this is helpful to them or useful. But then also, what are the outcomes we're expecting to see from that? And are we monitoring to see are people implementing the practices that they learned in those sessions? So those are, I think, again, are going to be the most helpful monitoring sessions for me, would be the ones where we are kind of drill it down to, here's the data, but then here's the implementation data as well. And so, and with that, I will adjourn.
And Trustee Kaufman, we do have an answer for you. 3.13% of students receive a disciplinary action. That is the rate for the district.
Okay, thank you. That's a very helpful other perspective. So comparing that to the 10% and 6.9%, it's a useful comparison. Thank you.
Vice President Foster.
No need for comment, extended conversation. I'm sure you all are on it. And I appreciate a lot of the conversation, and I appreciate a lot of the sort of critique and probing and pushing. I've never been comfortable with insubordination, disruption, rude to adult. I'm sure you all are aware of the problems with those categories, and that as part of your work, you apply special scrutiny to when that arises as the call for a disciplinary action. So no need for comment unless you want to or whatever, but that is something to continue to be aware of, and I'm sure you are.
And Trustee Foster, that's the purpose of the discipline action plan. Campuses, they're supposed to look at the students that are receiving the most referrals, teachers that write the most referrals, the top offenses, and they should be designing their professional development. What interventions and strategies are going to be implemented to address those issues? So when we go meet with campuses and we see that very similar, for this marking period, you had this many referrals, and this many referrals were for disruption. So what is your plan, and what steps are you taking to address that? Let's drill down. Which teachers are writing the most referrals for disruption? And then, it's not about, we got you, right? It's what are we going to do to support that teacher in the classroom? How are we helping them build authentic relationships with their students so that if they use bro, it's not an offensive term or they're not being disrespectful. It's part of the culture and how they talk today. So we do drill down to that level. And, we did visit every secondary campus this year and met with them, reviewed their discipline action plans, their data, and then offered recommendations on, based on your data, these are the steps we recommend that you take to address it. And then our executive directors were in those meetings, and they follow up with them as they continue to visit with those campuses. So that is that timeline, and we can get that to you, Trustee Kaufman, as well.
We also notice trends across the secondary level that kids that are more connected to fine arts, clubs, activities, things of that nature, you tend to see them less represented in the data or not represented multiple times. So we have really been very intentional about communicating that to secondary principals. One particular school, Eastside Early College High School, they have something now during their lunch hour called EAST, E-A-S-T, for engaging advocacy, socializing, and transforming. And the teachers volunteer to lead a club for 30 minutes of that period. Students are able to go, so you'll walk around during the lunchtime and see a chess club going on in this room, this going on over here, because it's not always sports that connects students. It's not always UIL activities. It's those anime clubs and things like that that students are interested in that connect them. Burnett Middle School, I wanted to point them out because you mentioned them, Trustee Kaufman, and we talked to Principal Larry De La Cruz. He mentioned that last school year they identified a list of 15 students that had the most referrals for the 2022-2023 school year. They called in parents for one-on-one meetings with the parent and the student, and they went over discipline, grades, attendance, acknowledged things that were not looking very good, and then they set a second date to meet exactly 3 weeks from the first meeting to go over behavior, grades, and attendance again. They referred to documents and things that the students were interested in, and for the most part, the campus saw progress across the board. And for the few students that they didn't see progress, they began to have frequent daily check-ins with the assistant principal. So it's those like unofficial check-in, check-out systems. We see them happen more in a structured environment if a student is on an individualized plan, but it can happen for any student that just needs to be connected. And then we also have similar trends for Aikens High School with Principal Michael Urban With Aikens High School, they're divided into mini academies. And so these communities give the kids, the students, a sense of belonging, and it also gives the staff a sense of belonging. So they have 7 learning academies that are tied to a specific program of study. And in the smaller learning community, the students are more familiar with the administrators and the counselors that are assigned to that learning community, along with the academy coordinator, and they have a more efficient and effective RTI process to occur with the highest needs students. Also, they keep the same administrator and counselor for all 4 years, allowing for a strong relationship and ongoing RTI processes, which is response to intervention, to occur. And they also use title funds to pay for a social worker, putting a plug in there for a graduation coach, and also a project specialist, and they also have Carrie that assists with restorative practices on campus. Staff are all trained for culturally responsive teaching practices, such as AVID strategies and sheltered instruction strategies to implement with all students. And they've increased PBIS, which is positive behavior incentive structures on campus for universal areas of the building, such as hallways, the cafeteria, and the courtyard. Increased supervision of schedule of adults in hotspots during transition times and other unstructured times, and then they utilize a pass system that determines which part of the building a student should be or not be. That's from Aikens. So shout out to those 2 principals for doing a phenomenal job of that.
Nice. Any other trustees? Don't apologize. Trustee Lugo, go ahead.
So thank you all for this presentation. And man, we could talk about this all night, but I won't, I promise. We're going to get in trouble. Student outcomes don't change until adult behavior changes. Y'all should be in those meetings. Anyways, okay. So help me understand a little bit about the data. So take, for example, if you have a campus with, I don't know, 75% of students are identified as Hispanic or Latino, Latina. So 75% of that, and you have 50% of disciplinary actions. We wouldn't see a discrepancy. Okay, disproportionality. It's been a long day. So we wouldn't see a disproportionality in that scenario because the disciplinary rate is lower than the percentage of the population. So I'm just sharing with my other colleagues, like if we see a particular campus where there's not a disproportional value, metric, whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not issues there, right? So there are some.
Yeah, and I think what Oscar has done is he's done a really good job of evaluating our plans and how we support. So we've actually changed, and if you look at the slide on the targeted supports, restorative practices, we kind of partnered and kind of worked on the same campuses. And this year we've changed it to where MTSS is going to work on campuses that just have high numbers overall, and we're going to work on culture and climate on those. And then Oscar's team will work on the ones that have African American disproportionality. So we did realize that that was kind of underserving some campuses that needed support. So we did change this year of how we're going to support campuses to address exactly what you're talking about.
All right, I love y'all. The other thing is, okay, so I think I understand what you just said. So a high number of incidences. My question was going to be, how do you define that? But I think you answered it just now. So
yeah, so it's just going to be based on their population. So based on their population and other campuses, we triaged out and kind of scored out the campuses that have a very high number of individual incidences based on their population compared to other campuses. And we've picked a couple of campuses to kind of target our support and our data collection.
Okay, great. And then, let's see, the other comment was, two-gen. Okay, so this was really popular in public policy a couple of years ago, but I still like it. So it's a two-gen approach, right? So I think about, I'm just going to apply it to myself, but I'm sure lots of other families have dealt with situations like this, right? You have a particularly difficult, as the parent or the caregiver or the guardian, you have a particularly stressful period, and maybe your student starts showing up late because you don't have your stuff together, or maybe their grades go, right? All the things that could happen. And I hear about the restorative circles. I love that. And I'm also wondering, to what extent might we also look at like connecting parents to, or, guardians to other services. Because I cannot emotionally regulate my kid if I'm like thinking about 500 different things.
I think the beauty of our child study system also helps with that. Like Oscar's work with that too is really based on family connections, and I'll let him speak to that. But our child studies team system is built around connecting the whole child and the families to sources they need. So we actually have a grant with Michael Susan Dell where we've built a youth service mapping system that's built into ECST, which is our electronic child study team system. And that youth service mapping maps out all the community supports that are surrounding that school, that are tied to that school. So when we're in the middle of a meeting and parents start saying they have food insecurity or rent insecurity, you can go into our system and click on it to see what resources do I have that I can connect this family with, and you can make referrals directly into the system and track to make sure that those organizations are help supporting as well. So we really try to build in the whole community because we also know the school doesn't have all the resources it needs as well. So we have to use our community partners, which we're blessed to have over 100 of them to be supporting us. And so we're building a tool that we are trying to get campuses trained on to use. We're piloting it across several campuses so they have that access, because some campuses don't have a parent support specialist or a social worker to help connect, and this is a way for them to be able to do that. And then I'll let you speak to yours.
And we're thankful for the priority that you all made of increasing our licensed mental health professionals. We now have twice as many licensed mental health professionals as we did last year, and that's a result of prioritizing, the importance of being able to connect our family with resources.
Thank you for that shout out and for actually doing the hiring. Thank you. Okay, then the last question I think is actually two questions. One of them is going to be, how can the board support the work? And then the other one is something more so for the administration to consider. So I recently went to back to school night at a middle school and at an elementary. I got some feedback for you. But the piece that's related to this is I'm just wondering if, to what extent do campuses think about having the counselors do more than just like, hi, my name is Susan. It's really like, hey, my name is Susan. I'm here for you, right? Like giving a little bit more information. And maybe that happens at other I don't know. I only know what I've seen. So that's one piece, or even just reminding folks about those resources. Because I know it comes in on s'mores or whatever it is that they send us. We got to click on and then read the whole thing. But come on, y'all. Not everybody has that time. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah, so I will say, we also have weekly what we call ECST meetings that take place at the campus level. So the principal leads that with the team, or maybe at some places it's the counselor that leads that with the team, and they go over the students that may be having excessive absences, or maybe it's not absences, they're at school, but they're just not checking into class. So we see the inconsistencies across periods with the absences, and we even look for those patterns of inconsistencies across periods, because this student always goes to their third period in their 7th period class. All of the other classes, you may see them as missing in action, but they make it a point to be in Mrs. So-and-so's class and Mr. So-and-so's class. So we look for those to have very organic conversations on getting the student connected and what we can do to ensure that they have a safe place or where they're intrinsically motivated to attend all of those classes. And so I do think that a lot of the work has been done at the secondary level and at the elementary level as well, with those regular weekly meetings, ECST meetings, to see who's potentially slipping through the cracks, who have we not connected with, and to reach out for supports. When you asked about what can the board do, I do want to say I was completely blown away this past Saturday by just the attendance of the Board of Trustees and Superintendent Seguda and the Austin ISD family at the State of Black Education Summit with the Black Leaders Collective. So we want to extend our gratitude for you all for just showing up and being there and being able to further cement on the educational experiences and lived experiences of our African American students as a collective district-wide effort. We don't feel like we're in this work alone. We do feel like we are truly supported, even on the dance floor, President Singh, to do what needs to be done. So we appreciate that. Oh. One more thing, at the secondary level, we have almost a third of our principals are new this year. So 31% are first-year principals for middle schools and high schools, and we have a great deal that are also second-year principals and third-year principals. But we have been very intentional in our hiring processes and practices. It's really hard to untrain or to teach somebody soft skills, to teach somebody how to be culturally proficient. So we are proud to say that we already have that capacity because we were intentional with our hiring practices. The community was very intentional with what they wanted, and we will start the process pretty soon for our 6 interim principal positions with that hiring practice. But we keep that at the forefront for the entire process, with the questioning to the screening to what we know that we need in Austin ISD in order for us to get to where we need to go.
Oh my God, that
And
makes
I think
me so
I'll just
happy.
say for the board, we just really appreciate the fact that you really understand the concept of whole child. Sometimes that's just a word that's thrown out there, and you really understand that academics, social, emotional, and behavior skills really are the way a student will be successful as an adult out in the community. And so we appreciate you guys continuing to focus on that for our department. You keep that to the forefront so that we can continue the work, so we appreciate your support with that.
Yeah, and what I'm appreciative is how collectively we're working to close this gap. You know, we met with Chief Hosek this morning, and she talked about the training that's needed and how we can provide that in their own boarding process. So before our staff ever step front or step, in front of our students, they're already receiving these skills. They're already understanding culturally responsive strategies to meet our students' needs. So thinking about, what steps can we take beforehand and move forward with that. Also, we've met with our new deputy. Super excited that she's here, and she's helping to prioritize our next steps as well, too. So we're very excited about this, where the features come and things that we're going to be doing moving forward.
Appreciate it very much. Thanks, y'all. I'm going to move on because it's late and we have a long executive session. So thank you all very much for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
So at this time, excellent questions and discussion. So we can now move to the consent agenda. Before we move forward, the administration requests to move consent agenda item 12.5, approval of contract for construction safety consultant for the 2022 bond program, to the September 21st board voting meeting. So we're not going to do 12.5. Okay, good to know. All right, trustees, are there any consent items anyone would like to pull for separate vote? Yay. All right. So
You said that out loud.
I know. That's okay. I spoke for everyone, I think. So, Secretary Boswell, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And do we need to, Board Counsel, do we need to say the number since we're removing 12.5, or can we just?
You could say.
Should she just say the numbers?
No, you can just say all excluding 12.5.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, easy.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the consent agenda, including every item except 12.5.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Secretary Boswell and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve all the consent agenda items except for 12.5, which will be moved to next month. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
What,
No, they've been pulled.
the abstention items?
No,
Oh.
Covered?
No, they.
Do we have?
Those aren't included.
Approve.
Those aren't included. You're good.
Okay, those aren't, yeah, those are the abstentions, so it
Yeah,
only goes
we're
up to
good.
13.1. I'm sorry, 15.1.
Gotta be careful.
Okay, so we're good. So, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I can't see your hand. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we will move to those items. Sorry. Secretary Boswell, do we have a motion to approve item 16.1? So these are the abstention items now.
Yes, I move to approve item 16.1, the 2023-24 Austin Community College Grant for Adult Education.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustees, any discussion? All right, having a motion by Secretary Boswell and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve item 16.1. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes
No, you have to keep going.
Oh, that's right. No, it doesn't matter. Well, that's right. Those opposed, those abstaining. There we go. Okay, so we have 8 in favor and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Gotta do it again.
Secretary Boswell, do we have a motion to approve 16.2 through 16.5?
Yes, I move to approve items 16.2 through 16.5 on the abstention item agenda.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
Second.
Trustees, is there any discussion? Okay. Having a motion by Secretary Boswell and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve items 16.2 through 16.5. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Those opposed, those abstaining. So we have 2 abstentions, is that correct? Okay, so we had 7 in favor and 2 abstentions. The motion passes. All right, Mr. Segura, would you like to share the appointment approved at tonight's meeting?
Absolutely. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Kenneth Walker, who's just been appointed as our new general counsel. He will be joining us here in about a week and a half or so. So at that point, be really excited to welcome him to the AISD family, and we'll be sending more information out regarding kind of that appointment. So thank you.
We'll look forward to welcoming him. All right, so we will now recess the open meeting at 9:16 p.m. and move into exec session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.071. When we are finished with the exec session, we will briefly return to the open session to formally adjourn the meeting. The adjournment will be recorded and be included in all replays of tonight's meeting. Thank you all for joining us and have a great evening. Thank you.
Because they're like, they didn't want the bad data. But he was just, doing it to document. He called parents, and his class was very, very functional. He wasn't holding camera, but it was just he had procedures in his class. And he's like, I'm not gonna fudge this data.
Right. Oh, well, that's what I hear.
Yes.
And of course they are. And it's the shadow discipline. And I hear it is an escalating thing. But I didn't ask the question. We have to feel good combo. discretionary, you're calling them mandatory and sending warnings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you connected with him and.
Yeah, he sent me something and I told him.
Yeah, we can get rid of them. You know what I'm saying? There's always happening. They're like, finally. There's always one.
Glad that worked out.
Because like, you were innocent data. You know? Like, she's like, why couldn't you say? Sorry.
That was in May. First week of school in September. So kids that have that